what we want to stress as we're going through whatever we're going through now is a level of compete and a level of accountability. And whoever, starting with Drew tomorrow night, that's his mandate. Accountability and compete.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. I feel like this is going to be a more upbeat show today.
I've gotten through my depression stage yesterday, and so I'm in a much better place today.
So the Blues are back in action tonight. Alex is wearing his wonderful maroon suit, so we know that it's going to be a good night for him.
Couldn't figure out the word suit?
Yeah, you know, it's been a long 24 hours for your guy. Luke doesn't really sleep anymore.
Not sleeping very much?
No, he doesn't really do a whole lot of that. We put him down to the bassinet, and he's like, not today, tough guy.
Okay, tough guy. I'm going to sleep now.
If he's on your chest, he's like, all right, boom, out immediately. And then you put him down in the bassinet, and he's ready to be back up. So
my personal favorite is when you lay him down and he's asleep, and you're like, oh, yeah, he'll go to sleep. And then all of a sudden, when you walk out of the room and you're closing the door, you hear a... Yeah, it's like, cool. Let's wake him up.
So that's pretty much how things are going for your guys. So if I'm a little light in the head today, that's pretty much why.
I got you.
The Blues should be well focused, though, because they are in a response mode right now, Alex, or at least that's what they should be. They are the third team this season to fire their coach, which is remarkable because we have not yet reached Christmas. But welcome to the NHL.
Everyone's trying to be the Blues.
Edmonton fired their coach. They were 3-9-1 when they made the move, Alex. They have won 10 of 13 games since making the coaching move. And T-Bone was telling me some of the advanced numbers earlier on these teams. It's all real. Like, the moves that they made have worked. These teams are actually good now.
That team, the coach's message got stale, and they had to fire the coach to get a new one.
Minnesota was 5-10-4 when they fired Evason. They won their first game after that one against the St. Louis Blues 3-1. They have won 5 of 7 since firing their head coach.
Can I make a statement on that one?
Sure.
If I'm a Minnesota Wild fan, I'm pissed that they had to fire Dean Evason for this because John Hines and Dean Evason are the exact same type of coach.
This is why I said yesterday, this is nothing about Craig Berube to me. I don't think Berube is a bad coach. I don't think he was the problem. I don't think he was even like a top 5 problem for this team. However, sometimes weird stuff happens in the NHL where you just got to make a move with the coach. I can't explain it. I think it's absurd that NHL players just like tune out their coach all of a sudden. They're like, yeah, I don't care about what you have to say anymore. But it happens. It happened to Ken freaking Hitchcock. If it can happen to that dude who's a Hall of Famer, it can happen to anybody. So Craig Berube, who I believe is a very good coach, it wasn't working anymore. They decided to make the move. And Alex, now we get to find out. Are they going to actually respond? And if you wanted an opponent to respond against, this is a pretty good one. Ottawa is not a very good hockey team right now. You should be able to see the response tonight in the kind of response that Doug Armstrong is looking for. Accountability, physicality, compete, emotion. That is the kind of stuff that you as a fan will immediately be able to see whether it's there or not.
Yeah, I mean, this is the prototypical game where you're about to find out because every time, and I had this stat when the Blues played the Minnesota Wild, in the past like 10 years when a team fires their coach, I think there was only 2 times that team lost the first game. So typically you get a boost in energy because you know you got to go out there and prove that it shouldn't have been them, it's on us, blah, blah, blah. The Ottawa Senators, though, although are not a great team, they're a team that has a Brady Tkachuk and will play physical with you. And they just beat the Detroit Red Wings 5-1 a few nights ago. So this is the type of game that you're going to be focusing on 2 areas if you're a Blues fan, and also Doug Armstrong. The passion and the physicality. Those are going to be the areas that, look, if this team goes out there and just kind of bides their time and waits for those odd man rushes, you're going to know that this was a team and not a coach decision. Because if Ottawa outplays you, an Ottawa team that just lost to the Carolina Hurricanes, then you just got your answer in one game. Now, I will tell people the flip side of this. Don't fall for fool's gold in this one tonight.
Oh, they can't win you back over with one game.
No, but what will happen, and I'm already preparing myself for postgame.
This is what I'm going to lead with on the show.
They're going to go
tomorrow.
out, and they're going to perform well, and then all of the trolls are going to come out from under their bridge. Oh, this is why they had to fire Craig Berube.
Yeah.
Berube couldn't coach this team. That's not what this is.
This is me tomorrow.
This is the boost of energy that happens when a team realizes that they just got a coach fired and they perform well. This is going to be another extend our taxes, IRS, please, for another month before we decide.
Yeah, well, I'm skeptical of them responding tonight because if they couldn't get up for the two worst teams in the East, and I get it, the message was stale from Craig Berube potentially, man, why should I believe you're going to have this quote-unquote come-to-Jesus moment when Craig Berube gets fired and you're going to show up tonight against Ottawa? Like, I don't believe they will. I think they're going to get beat tonight. I really do believe that. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong and we actually see a response from this team.
I honestly don't even care if they win or lose. Like, is that a weird thing to say?
No,
maybe,
it doesn't matter if they win or lose. It matters what they look like.
Win or loss. I care about if they just go out there and look like they care. Because I've seen so many quotes over the last year and a half that are coming out of the Blues locker room afterwards that say something to the effect of, yeah, we had it for like 40 minutes, but then there was that second period where we just didn't play hockey. We like forgot that we needed to show up. Or, yeah, there's just guys in this locker room that don't seem to be willing to invest enough for the team. I don't want to hear that. That's the thing that I don't want to hear. If you lose 3-2 and it's a tough, hard-fought game going, I don't care who the opponent, fine. That's fine. I can live with that, man, as a Blues fan. I can watch that game, see that you're emotionally invested, that you're physically invested, and we can all move forward with our lives. It's the lack of compete. It's the lack of try that bothers me on a night-in, night-out basis.
Well, and that's what Doug Armstrong said yesterday. Like, you're going to lose games that you outplay against your opponent, and that's fine. It's when you walk away and say that team just plain simple outplayed you. And first period, I think, is going to be the best period for this team tonight. The problem is going to be the second and third period, and it's been the problem all season for this team. What do they look like 40 minutes in? What do they look like 50 minutes in? What do they look like 60 minutes in? Because at some point, this team that has been the same team for over a year now, they're going to hit their wall where they get up by a goal or 2 goals and say, we got this.
I mean, really, we only have to watch the first period and find out who scores first.
Yeah, it's true.
No, they broke that the other game. They scored first and they lost. Yeah. So no more of those.
Well, if they don't score first, we know what's happening then.
What are you talking about? They came back and beat Arizona when Arizona scored first.
Look, I haven't seen them play. I haven't seen them play a full 60 minutes, but like 3 times this year. So I'm not going to believe they're going to show up and do it tonight, even though there's a new coach. I just don't see it. You want to talk about being out on a team? About as far out as possible on the St. Louis Blues right now.
We know, buddy. We know. Don't worry.
Yeah, calm down over there, Tanner. We get it. You're mad.
I'm not necessarily mad. I feel realistic. You know?
He doesn't care enough to be mad at this point. They have no emotional investment in Tanner's mind. I feel like it's already
July of the Cardinals season. That's where I'm at on the St. Louis Blues.
The Blues did make some decisions when it came to the line combinations earlier today with Bannister on the ice for the first time as the head coach of the St. Louis Blues. He has decided, Booch, Thomas, Kyrou, you're back together, baby. Let's put the boys back together.
Did Berube leave like a Post-it note on his desk, be like, hey, just go back to Booch, Thomas, and Kyrou, man.
Don't put Booch at center. It cost me my job.
True. Saad, Shin, and Kapanen is your second line heading into tonight. Toropchenko back in the top 9, baby. Can't quit him. Hayes and Neighbors as your third line. It's good to see Hayes back at center once again. We don't have 3 centers on the same line. I think that's probably a good decision.
I'll take the 78% from the faceoff dot on the center position, please.
And then Mackenzie McEachern. Welcome back, good sir. You are with Sundqvist and McGing as the fourth line. Wow. Oh boy. Alexandrov and Blais are your extras when it comes to the forwards. Defensively, another decision that has been made. The top 4 is the same. Leddy, Parayko, Krug, Falk, but Scandella is in with Tucker tonight. No Perunovic, and we'll see who ends up starting in net. I have not seen anything yet on that as to who's the first off of the ice.
If I'm Bannister, I'm going to Binnington.
100%.
First game is like, I'm going to need Binnington in this one.
Alex, what did you make of the decisions there? Biggest ones, Toropchenko in your top 9 again. They've gone back to the centers playing center. No play in the lineup, no Perunovic in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, Toropchenko in the top 9, fine. Basically, you have no other top 9 forward on this team. Fourth line, a little surprising they went with McEachern there, but McEachern plays with, I would assume, the fire that Drew Bannister and the Blues want. I understand the Tucker. I don't like the Tucker thing, because I think Perunovic deserves to be in the lineup. He's playing well. But Tucker, and this is a physical team with Brady Tkachuk, you need that physicality. The one for me that I'm highlighting and I'm circling is Kyrou. I think when you go back to Kyrou with Thomas and Buchnevich, and I told you guys this with that Detroit Red Wings game, why you put Kyrou back up with that top line of Thomas and Neighbors is, look, we've hired a coach. Everybody's talking about it around the National Hockey League. You're an $8 million player. We need you to play like an $8 million player. So you're on our top line. We need the compete. We need the passion. We need the aggressiveness on that top line with Thomas and Buchnevich. I personally feel like this is a all eyes on you, Kyrou situation.
Blues are back in action tonight. First game with a new head coach. No more Craig Berube here in St. Louis. Pre-game with Alex starts at 6 o'clock.
It's Bennington's bobblehead night tonight.
Oh,
come on,
Benner's
BK.
in that.
Hofer's
I
playing.
can exclusively report Benner. As a JP Morosi reporter, I can exclusively report
Hofer
based
starting.
on them having the bobbleheads that Benner will be in net
I want one
tonight.
of those bobbleheads
Bennington
so
first
bad.
off the ice.
He's on his little.
Is he?
He's on his little scooter.
Glad that I exclusively reported that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're like Morosi. You clicked it, man.
Exactly.
Way to go.
7 o'clock, he was indeed on the plane. 7 o'clock, puck drop right here on 101 ESPN, your home of the St. Louis Blues. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll continue discussing the Blues with Joey Vitale in the 12 o'clock hour. We're going to be joined by another one of the great hockey insiders in North America. That is Darren Dreger of TSN. So tell all your fans to gather around. Darren Dreger joining the show coming up at 12:15. But next, the Cardinals wouldn't actually do this, right? We'll discuss it next here on 101 ESPN. I felt like we didn't talk enough about the Cardinals rotation. We spent a full day of doing radio. Not a single time did we mention the Cardinals, the rotation, the free agent pitchers, trade options. We didn't mention any of it. And Alex,
Good, because it's the off season and nobody cares.
didn't feel right to me.
I'm just going to turn your mic off. That
Didn't
was embarrassing.
feel right to me. So we got to get back to it. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll talk to Joey Vitale. Don't worry, we'll get back to your Blues. But
Yeah, we will.
Alex, Kylie McDaniel of ESPN.com MLB.com wrote something yesterday that I found to be very interesting. He was breaking down where we're at in the offseason, what we have learned thus far, and what it all means for the free agents that still remain out on the market. He said something about Blake Snell that I think is worth discussing here for the Cardinals. He said, quote, I could see teams that had merely kicked the tires on Blake Snell early in the cycle circling back with a contract that it turns into something like a front-loaded 3-year, $100 million contract. That would provide a strong AAV and an opt-out or two that would give Snell a chance to jump back into the market when it is a bit less crowded, end quote. His basic belief is this has not been the market that Blake Snell thought it was going to be for him. There have not been the suitors that he expected it to be. It's pretty cool surrounding whether or not he's going to get a massive contract this offseason. Let's operate under that assumption for a moment, Alex. And I think this could change depending on what happens with Yamamoto. Like, there's still a lot that has to be left to be decided. But if it's true that there is not a huge market surrounding Blake Snell, and he would be open to the idea of a 3-year deal worth $100 million where maybe there's an opt-out or two involved in it, and it's $30 a year, let's say, somewhere around there. Not will the Cardinals do that. Should the Cardinals be interested in making a move like that, in your opinion?
Well, absolutely, they should. I mean, if the guy's willing to sign for a lesser amount of years and a doable amount of salary that you can make work, yeah, you should be checking in on this. And if you don't, shame on you. Because he's better than Sonny Gray and Miles Mikolas, and a 1-2 punch of Snell and Gray is very dangerous for a team, specifically in the Central Division and also the National League. It's not going to happen, though. And it's not anything about, the money. And let's go back to what John Mozeliak said at his press conference.
We need another starter.
We want guys that want to be here. And you think Blake Snell's, now that his contract is coming down a peg, is like, hey, you know what? I want to play for less, and I want to be in St. Louis.
Probably.
No, you need to go change those sheets because you're going to sweat on them again later on tonight. That's the part that gets me. John Mozeliak has this fantasy world of like, oh, well, guys want to play for St. Louis Cardinals. There's a certain group that absolutely do. But guys like Blake Snell, it's probably at the bottom of their priority list because at the top is, I want to go win. And if I'm signing for 3 years, $100 million, and there's an opt-out opportunity, I'm going to go to A, a team that looks like a World Series contender, and B, a team that knows how to get the best out of his specific type of skills as a pitcher. So should they? Absolutely. Will they? Sorry to ruin your parade.
You just suck, man. You know,
I know. Sorry.
Should they? Absolutely, they should be involved if this is going to be what he's looking for, because it's a shorter-term deal, and though the AAV would be probably higher than what I think he would get if it was like a 5-6 year deal, yeah, you should be interested in it, because when he is right and locked in and he's won 2 Cy Youngs because of that, his stuff is beyond better than Sonny Gray's stuff. Now, there are going to be years potentially where, like, he has a 4 ERA, a 3.5 ERA, and his stuff is still good, but it's more in line with the Sonny Gray, I would say, and he's walking more. But absolutely, they should have interest in this. If his market is going to fall like this, and it's going to be a 3-year deal, $30 million, you can have some options on it. Absolutely, because a shorter-term deal with a guy with his kind of profile just makes more sense. And then you have that rotation that when it comes to town on turn, people go, oh, bleep, we got to see Blake Snell and Sonny Gray. And now you've done exactly what the goal was this offseason, which was get 2 starters that slot in ahead of Miles Mikolas. And now you actually have a decent 1-2 punch for October as well.
Yeah, this would be something that I'd be all over. You don't have to give up talent to be able to go acquire him, so you're not talking about what you'd have to give up for Tyler Glasnow or Dylan Cease. In fact, I would just flat out rather have Blake Snell on this 3-year contract, even if there is opt-outs, more than I would want Tyler Glasnow, because of what you'd have to give up in terms of the talent to be able to make that work. And the money isn't all that dissimilar. If you're paying $30 million this year for Blake Snell or $25 million for Tyler Glasnow, man, give me Snell. And put him at the front end of this rotation. I saw somebody on our text line at 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line, said, hey, guys, the Cardinals still need to go out there and fix the bullpen. If you ended up adding Blake Snell, you probably couldn't do that. True, and I'm fine with it. If you ended up going out and getting Blake Snell and you just put Steven Matz into your bullpen, cool, let's do it. Like, you've thrown numbers at the problem in the bullpen. You probably go out and acquire a couple more guys that are like lower end of the spectrum types of deals. Maybe you make one more deal for a bullpen arm via trade. Cool. there are always relievers that are available at the deadline, and the Cardinals have shown an ability and a willingness to go make those kinds of deals. What the Cardinals have not shown is the willingness or ability to go make a deal for a number 1 caliber starter. Alex, T-Bone, you guys tell me if I'm wrong. Can you remember them making such a deal at a trade deadline in the last 20 years?
Jose Quintana.
Yeah, I mean, like, seriously, is there
John
a guy that
Lester.
the Cardinals have acquired in that realm over the last 20 years? They never go out and get involved. Like, they're not even involved in those kinds of trades.
I agree with you, but who's a bullpen? Like, am I forgetting a bullpen arm that they've brought in that's a high-leverage bullpen arm at the deadline in recent years?
At the deadline in recent years, I can't think of one immediately.
Because I
had,
agree
Juan
with you.
Nicasio that they traded for.
Yeah, he wasn't really.
I know. He's like 7th inning guy.
Like, I would have bought more if you said Stratton.
He's fair.
Woody Williams is the one that comes to mind.
That was 20 years ago.
2001, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, no, but when he came here, he was an ace.
See, I don't remember because I was in diapers still.
I mean, I was 11, but if I remember correctly, he was their best pitcher that season.
When guys become available at the deadline, the legit front-end starters, you never even hear the Cardinals connected in those conversations because of what it costs to get them. So instead, get them in the offseason. And if it's actually this kind of a market, it's not as many years, which is what scares the Cardinals. It's why they were interested in a guy like Sonny Gray, because you can get him on a 3-year deal that's not just this outlandish amount of money. If Blake Snell is actually having a market that is yet to develop, the Cardinals should be all in on going out and saying, hey, I know you probably don't want to play in the Midwest. This is not your first idea of what you want to do. Let's go shove and let's go prove yourself to the rest of the market. And if you come win here, either you're going to get that $30+ million per year, which is a pretty nice payday for Blake Snell, or you can hit the market again in a year and see if somebody else is willing to take you on. Maybe then LA becomes available to you, or New York, or something else. Maybe one of those teams suddenly is more interested in your services. So if I'm the Cardinals, this would 100% be something that I would be willing to go out there and explore. Do I think they will? No. But I think they absolutely should be in the market like this.
Yeah, I agree. Will they do it? No. This is what I find interesting, because now that we're having this conversation is, Mo says, like, we shouldn't just build through free agency. Like, when he says, like, making a splash, it's not just through free agency, it's via trades as well. They can't go into the season short, in my opinion, in one thing or the other. Because when have they swung a trade for a high-leverage reliever? We just talked about it. I can't think of a name that they've done it for recently.
Those guys are cheaper, though, to acquire.
They are, but they haven't done it. And that's the thing is, like, yeah, I agree. They are cheaper than, like, going out and getting a starter.
It, to be fair. It also hasn't been something that they've gone into.
This is where I would push back, where they say, like, we don't need that arm. I'd go, well, yeah, you do, because you should be building for October. Like,
you can't build for October if you don't get to October.
All right, Mo, but it's July. You should start building for October at July.
We build for April.
And, like, look, in certain years, and I think they end up, maybe it is more so they haven't been able to go out and make this move because they put themselves in the position they are at the deadline, which is, oh, crap, we're actually an 84-win team. We need to build just to get to 90, just to win the division and get in. But they haven't shown a ability to go out and be willing to trade for that back-end arm, and they haven't been able to show an ability to go and trade for that front-end starter. So leaving yourself short and then saying, like,
but
oh, hey,
right now you have
a
back-end arm. Like, I can talk myself into them having a back-end arm in Ryan Helsley. I can't talk myself into anybody being a number 1 starter.
But,
nobody.
Agreed, but I think you need more than one back-end arm. That would be my
But you
counter.
can go get a 7th or 8th inning arm at the deadline for a reasonable price. You cannot do that with a number 1 starter.
That's
if
right.
Ryan Helsley becomes what he was 2 years ago, you're fine in the 9th inning. You might have somebody that emerges from your bullpen currently that can be your 8th inning setup man. You have nobody that can be, even if you want to call Sonny Gray the number 1, you have nobody that can slot in as your number 2 starter. That's where I would say, like, this team's going, there's no doubt about it, to go into the season light in one of those 2 areas that we just discussed. And I think they are far more likely to acquire somebody that you can talk yourself into as his 8th or 9th inning arm at the deadline than going out and acquiring that guy that can start a game 1 or a game 2 of a postseason series for you, where you feel comfortable with them going up against whoever it is that's coming up against you from the opposition. So if I had to make a decision, and you probably will, where are you comfortable being light? Way more comfortable for this team being light in the bullpen than being light in the rotation, given what they currently have assembled on the roster.
I agree with everything that you just said, and the reason I said that they need to answer both questions in the offseason, whether you think they will do it or not, is because they talk about the trade deadline, and we talk about the trade deadline as, hey, they can go out and get a high leverage arm, which I agree. And again, to me, they should have been doing that in previous years as well. They need to go out and get a high end starter at the deadline. Well, they say this stuff about the deadline of, oh, they should go out and they should do this at the trade deadline if they are light in this area. It's almost like a New Year's resolution for them, though.
Right, they don't do it.
To where they say it and then they don't do it. Just like me, I'm going to get in shape this year. But if January 7th, I'm not going to be running still.
That's fine. But if they go out and pay $30 million for Blake Snell, and they this offseason have acquired Blake Snell, Sonny Gray, Lance Lynn, and Kyle Gibson, I'm not going to get up here and be mad about it. That's a pretty damn good offseason if that's what you went out there and set out to do, and you were able to go out there and acquire those guys. Yes, you're a little light in your bullpen. I don't care. We'll figure that out whenever we get there. Your rotation now is something that you haven't seen from this rotation in 7 years. He's Alex, that's T-Bone on BK. We got to get to Joey Vitale, Blues analyst from Valley Sports Midwest, on 101 ESPN. Coming up next, you're on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they will be taking on the Ottawa Senators. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. And then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. This will be the first game for Drew Bannister as the interim head coach with the St. Louis Blues. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find a road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Joey Vitale. He's a Blues analyst for 101 ESPN and Bally Sports Midwest. Joe, big day yesterday out of the Centene Community Ice Center as Craig Berube was let go and Doug Armstrong was able to address the media. Today, you have Drew Bannister out there on the ice for the first time with his new team. We appreciate the time as always. Let's start out there. What did you make of the big news of Craig Berube being let go?
You know, BK, it was something that I don't think was a surprise. I think something needed to change here. I think this was a team that was underperforming. And, you know, as cliche as it is in the sport of hockey, you know, this is just what they do. This is always the first step. They see if they can come in, bring in a new voice. You know, you can't really do much with the players, obviously, especially with up against the cap. It's dollars in, dollars out. So a very difficult situation from a player standpoint to change things midseason. So really the one and only thing to do, first step is try a new coach. Drew Bannister, of course, now replacing Craig Berube. Talked to some of the players this morning. I ran into Jordan Binnington. We had a good 5-minute conversation. I asked him about Chief. How's he doing? Are you going to miss him? And, you know, Jordan Binnington, he just looked me in the eyes and he said, listen, Joe, it was a great run. It was a great run. Amazing memories. Love the guy as a person, but we're also happy for him. He's going to move on and he's going to be just fine. And now you got to turn the page. So a very business-like approach from a player standpoint. At the morning skate this morning, like you mentioned, Drew Bannister on the ice, blowing the whistle, you know, directing orders. It was a very long morning skate compared to how the Blues have been skating all year and really under the tenure of Craig Berube. Typically a morning skate for him is 20 minutes-ish, up-tempo drills, a quick little stretch, get off the ice. Guys, this was probably a 35 to 40-minute morning skate, almost double the time. I would say 2 or 3 extra drills they did. So you can tell one of the things right off the hop this coach is looking to do is to not only maybe practice more, but bring more details into the practice. So right off the hop, a very different style as far as the morning skates go for Drew Bannister.
Joe, you played in the NHL, you played in the AHL. We always hear about messages getting stale, which leads to coaches being fired, and you've seen this. How does a message get stale from a coach who won a Stanley Cup?
Well, I think, Alex, like anything else, it's just sometimes you need a change up. You know, it's why we as humans, we love, you know, taking trips and going on vacations, and it's a breath of fresh air. And then you come home and it's just that emotional and mental reset sometimes you need. You know, from a player standpoint, it's not that the message from Craig Berube maybe was a bad message. Like anything, it just maybe gets a little bit stale, and you have, you know, same veterans, you know, whether it be Braden Shen or, you know, Colton Parayko or Jordan Binnington. These guys have been around Chief for a very long time. It is the same message. He's trying to get the guys to, you know, activate in a certain way. And sometimes it's just a different tone, a different wording. You know, one thing about Drew Bannister, from what we understand so far, is doesn't say a lot. He's a very more stoic presence, they think. Guys talking, Mackenzie McEachern and Hugh McGing mentioned them this morning. What's his style like? Of course, like they said, he doesn't babble too much. He's very precise about the words he chooses. He never repeats himself, and his message is very simple. So you look at a team right now that is certainly looking for a little bit of a spark. I think maybe sometimes less is more, and we'll see if it trends that way here tonight.
Joe, they did make a couple of changes to the lineup. You mentioned Mackenzie McEachern. He's going to be in there. They're putting Tyler Tucker back in the lineup instead of Perunovic, and they've reunited the Kyrou Thomas and Buchnevich line. What'd you make of the decisions when it came to the personnel going into tonight's game?
Yeah, I think that it was, you know, right off the hop, I want to say that, you know, Doug Armstrong probably had a good say in what the lineup was going to look like. I think that, clearly there's been some adjustments where, Drew Bannister, I don't think he's got his grasp on this team well enough yet to say, hey, these are the guys I know. I think he's just getting familiar. So I would like to think that Steve Ott and, of course, Doug Armstrong's had a big say in the lineup here tonight. I love Kyrou up on this top line. I think you have to figure out a way to instill more confidence in Kyrou. I think he needs a spark, and maybe him with Buchnevich and Thomas will do just that. Mackenzie McEachran, talked to him again here this morning. He actually got called up right after he heard that Bannister was going. They did not travel to St. Louis together. I thought they would have, even though they came in on the same day. Their flights were a few hours apart. But Mackenzie McEachran, of course, is going to bring that speed. He's going to bring tenacity. He's going to be hard on the forecheck. And just a really dependable winger there on that fourth line. So a few different changes on top of Jordan Binnington going back into the cage here tonight. And he has been facing a lot of rubber. And like I said, talked to him this morning, and his body is feeling really good. He's been staying in great shape and looking forward to the big challenge here tonight.
Joe, is a move like moving on from Craig Berube, and I hate to just hem in on that one because obviously it's kind of moved on now. You go to this next one. But if you're guys like Braden Shen and Colton Parayko who have been around, who have seen the success that comes into play, is this the move that kind of pushes those guys over the edge to start maybe getting into guys a little bit more if it's not working out on the ice?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Alex. I think that without Craig Berube there, I think you're going to see veterans have to step up more. I think that, listen, Craig Berube was such a great vocal presence, and I think that when you have a great motivator like Craig Berube, what's going to happen is you're going to end up kind of leaning on him a little bit, and maybe that's part of the messaging. And you listen, every championship team that you see in the National Hockey League, it's the leadership from within the room. I mean, the championship teams, they kind of steer themselves, if you will. And a lot of times with an emotional coach that always has great messages, you can kind of, that veteran player to player can get lost a little bit. So now, Drew Bannister comes in, and it's an interesting point because now you look at it like, well, hey, maybe a quieter coach, a more stoic presence, and now you're going to have, certain players step up more and be that vocal presence on the bench or maybe the locker room. And maybe that's the quieter coach is something that's going to kind of galvanize this group together where they're going to have to come together because that is the message. One thing is certain, and you brought up, coaching changes, and I've been a part of some as a player. I've seen a bunch now as a broadcaster. I remember being in that locker room, and one thing that is going to be going through everyone's mind for those players here tonight moving forward, and if it doesn't, they're going to be in trouble. Players need to start stepping outside their comfort zone. I mean, that is what this says. We've lost a coach. The players are next. The Blues are in a very interesting stretch right now where they're one game below 500. They have to figure out a way to get above 500 again before January 1, in my opinion, to really have a good shot at this thing. And listen, their opponents are going to be tough. Aside from the Ottawa Senators here tonight, you're facing the Colorados. You got multiple Pittsburgh Penguins. You have to go down to Florida for a Tampa Panthers run. I mean, that's always a challenge as well down in Florida. So plenty of good hockey teams are facing coming up. And from a player standpoint, everyone's got to look inside themselves, and they have to bring an extra level that maybe they're not familiar with. If you're Marco Scandella, maybe you have to start getting a little bit chippier. Maybe if you're, let's call it a Mackenzie McEachran tonight, maybe if that nastiness isn't a part of your normal brand, maybe you bring it to some degree here tonight. Whatever it is, everyone's got to figure out a way to dig inside themselves a little bit, get outside that comfort zone if they want to start steering this thing in the right direction.
Joey Vitale is our guest here on 101 ESPN. Joe, final question that I've got for you. Whether it's Bannister or somebody else who ends up coming in here for the long term, what do you think that the Blues need in their next head coach?
Well, they need a head coach that is going to try to fix this power play. I mean, that is the number one thing. And it's funny. It's not funny, but it's actually easier to fix this season than a lot of people would think. I think a lot of people are looking at all the goals against, you're looking at the wins, losses. But if you were to focus on one area and one area alone, you'd be absolutely shocked if we can improve in this area, how this team not only would look a lot differently, they'd be in a different spot in the standings, and maybe Craig Berube is still the head coach. I mean, go back to that last game, for example. You have a 6-on-4. You draw a penalty late. You pull your goal. It's a 6-on-4. If you get a power play goal right there, all of a sudden you take this game to overtime. I don't like the way Ville Husso played in that game. I thought he was swimming all over the place. To me, the Blues team wins that game, especially if they get to a shootout. So there's just one example. Guys, there's been like at least 8 or 9 examples of it this year where they are so close at the end. Maybe they have a power play late to get the equalizer, maybe get ahead by one, whatever it is. You're at 8% right now or something like that. Well, even if you double that to 16%, which still isn't great, but if you just double that, and let's say you go from 7 power play goals, let's say you have 15 at this point, I'm telling you, it's a difference about 3 or 4 or 5 games, and you may be looking at a difference of 10 points, which it completely drastically changes the trajectory of this division and where they are at in the standings. So for a new coach to come in, he's got to figure out a way to instill more confidence into the skilled players that Doug Armstrong's put together. You got great skill. You got Thomas, Buchnevich, Kyrou. You got a great passer and disher in Prunovich and Krug. The net firm presence of Kevin Hayes. These are proven goal scorers, guys. There's plenty of talent on paper. They should be having more success. So it's up to the head coach, whoever they bring in, to figure out a way to instill confidence that these guys are great hockey players, they can score goals, and this power play can make a difference in some games.
Alex has mentioned it a number of times on the show, the number of opportunities this team has had, down by 1 goal or up by a goal, to be able to either put the game away or tie the game on the power play. They haven't converted. Joe, appreciate the time as always, man. Looking forward to the call with you and Curbs later on tonight here on 101 ESPN. We will certainly be tuning in for that. Appreciate the time as always. We'll talk with you again next week, my man.
Sounds good, boys. You guys have a great day now.
See you, Joe. That's Joey Vitale, Blues analyst for 101 ESPN and Bally Sports Midwest. Appreciate his time as always.
Power play, as if you mentioned, it goes to 16%. You'd be 23rd in the National Hockey League. So
my
significant jump if you just double it from 8% that you're at right now.
But you're still bottom half of the league. That's
you're
crazy.
still bottom half of the league.
You're so bad right now that you could double your percentage of goals on the power play, and you would still be considered a bottom 10 power play in the NHL. That's crazy.
But to his point, you'd be in the same area as the Winnipeg Jets, who are holding a playoff spot. You'd be in the same area as the... Hold on, let me see who else was on there. Like, there are playoff teams that have 16% power play. So, like, there are other sides to this thing. Colorado's at 19%. Minnesota's at 17%. So, like, there are teams that don't have the best power play that are still really good teams. But
the Flyers at 11%.
This team, it's just the power play has plagued them more times than not. And if you're curious, and look, you can't judge Drew Bannister from the minors with this one tonight, because this is more going to be Steve Ott and Mike Weber coaching and Bannister just helping out.
What's his face? That's Analyst now, apparently.
Yeah,
for the
Mike
Blues.
Babcock Jr.
Nope. The new guy that they brought in.
Oh, Brad Richards.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, Brad Richards is going to be doing all of that. I'll talk to Joe about that tonight on pregame. But, I mean, Bannister had a power play that was 19% with the Springfield Thunderbirds. And, I mean, think of who's on that power play. Like, no disrespect to him, but Nathan Walker, Mackenzie McEachran, Adam Gaudette. Like, you didn't have the prowess that you're going to have on this one. So it'll be interesting. That's going to be a massive part of it. But to Joe's point at the beginning with Jordan Kyrou, getting him going and instilling some confidence, man, if he still struggles the rest of the season, that is going to be task number 1 by this new head coach.
Blues versus Senator tonight. Alex has the pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock right here on your home of the Blues. Curbs and Joey with the call. Puck drop at 7. By the way, you can join Chris Kerber in 101 ESPN on Sunday at the new Chicken and Pickle in St. Charles. Sunday is the first pickleball tournament ever at the new Chicken and Pickle location, and it's an ugly sweater tournament. Plus, plenty more happening at their new facility, which includes 11 pickleball courts. You can check it all out this Sunday with Chris Kerber, who will be live at Chicken and Pickle from 11 to 1 o'clock out in St. Charles. Get more information at 101ESPN.com. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Questions and answers is coming up next here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions in, get them in now on the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 636, Alex, do you think that the Blues would trade Krug or Nick Leddy if they end up missing the playoffs this year?
I think they'll trade Krug or Nick Leddy whenever they want, but Krug and Nick Leddy get to decide. And honestly, if I'm Krug, unless you're sending me, and I'm just putting myself in his shoes, no reporting here, unless you're sending me to my hometown, which would be Detroit, or you're sending me back to Boston, I'm not going anywhere. He's got young kids. He's got a family. He wants to stay where he is, and I can't blame him for that as much as people get frustrated with it. And if you're Nick Leddy, you're comfortable here. Why would you want to be traded away? He's won a cup. Krug, I would imagine, wants to win a cup before he retires, so maybe that's the only reasoning behind accepting a trade. But yeah, I think the Blues are going to always try and find trades to better their defensemen. The problem is all of these no trade clauses. Good thing you didn't let players dictate the organization.
Yeah, I think they'll try in the offseason, no matter what happens, to move on from one of those two. I don't know if they'll be successful or not because of the no trade clauses. I could see the scenario. I mean, Army talked a big game yesterday. We'll see if he's willing to actually do it. I could see a scenario where they potentially try to buy out the Nick Leddy contract.
I do too, especially if they veto another trade. I could see him enacting it if they have a move in place next season for something better.
I don't know.
That sounded bad. Not something better.
I don't know if they would do Krug because it would cost him a lot more on the cap. But Leddy
and longer.
Yeah, and longer. Leddy would be the one that, like, if they were going to buy out a contract, and Army had mentioned about potentially doing that, that's the one that I could see them potentially
Nick Leddy,
doing.
if you bought out his contracts,
it'd be 2 years left.
It'd be 4 years that you'd be paying it out. So 2 years on top of what you're currently paying. 1.5 mil on the cap hit for 2024, and then 2-1-1. So that one you could probably do. You could get away with that.
That one doesn't kill you as much as a Krug one.
It also
It's
doesn't
like
save
5
you
years.
a ton. Like, that's the other thing about buying out Nick Leddy is, like, is the player worth
saves
more?
You 2 or 3 mil.
It saves you about $2 million next year, and then it costs you an extra $1 million for a couple of years. So, like, there's savings there. But
and with the cap going up 4 mil this year and 4 mil next year, it's not hurting you.
my question would be, like, are you just better off keeping him for $4 million?
The only way you buy out a player is if you were upgrading, which to me, you trade or you get a Noah Hannafin in the offseason and say, okay,
the one I would buy out is Krug. Because it's $2 million over 2025 to 2029, so that's a long time, but it's $2 million. You're saving real money there.
Only $2 million?
$2 million per year. Yep.
Oh,
yeah. You would end up spending about $12.5 million to buy him out, but in order to do so,
I thought it costed you more if you bought
it's
Torrey
according
Krug
to
out.
capfriendly.com. So I'm using their buyout calculator.
Well, yeah, that saves you more money, and I mean Nick Leddy.
You would save $6 million on the cap next year, $4 million a year after that, and then almost $4 million a year after that, and then $2 million for 3 years.
And Nick Leddy's somebody that you could use on a third pair, second pair at times. But again, you don't do any of this unless you're upgrading your defense, because as much as people want to complain about Torrey Krug and Nick Leddy, they are playing 21, 22 minutes a night. And if you're not playing those guys, you're playing Tyler Tucker and Scott Perunovich in your top four.
A couple of things left here. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. By the way, in 15 minutes, we'll talk Blues with Darren Dreger of TSN. In my opinion, one of the best insiders in all of North America. Guys, more likely to happen, the Eagles are eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, or they win the Super Bowl this year?
I'll say it's more likely they win the Super Bowl. I don't think they can, but I don't believe they're going to get bounced in the first round. I don't know what the matchup would be if the playoffs were to start today.
Depends on if they end up having a better record than the Cowboys or not.
I think the Eagles are going to be better than whoever they play in that first round. I don't know.
As of today, they would play against the Bucks.
Yeah, and they wipe the floor with the Bucks. I don't even think the Bucks.
But if they were to win the NFC East, they would play against the Packers. Also, obviously, a huge difference.
Wipe the floor with that team, too. So, yeah, I'll say it's more likely they win the Super Bowl.
I'll say more likely they get bounced in the first round. They remind me so much of the Minnesota Vikings from last year. Now, granted, again, I've said this before, little caveat, they have much better talent than what I think the Vikings had. But they're like, I think it's 5-1 or 6-1 in one-score games. They barely have a plus point differential, even though they've got 10 wins. And the offenses felt just off all year, and their defense isn't that great. So I could easily see them losing in the first round to whoever they end up playing and laying an egg. I don't see them beating a Dallas, a San Francisco. They could probably beat Detroit, but they're going to have to beat one of those two that I said, Dallas and San Fran, to get to the Super Bowl. So I think it's more likely that they end up losing in the first round.
I think it's more likely they win the Super Bowl. I'd be pretty surprised if they lose in the first round of the playoffs. And the reason why is because of the teams that they're likely to play. I think if they end up winning the division, they're probably going up against one of the Vikings, Packers, Rams, etc. I think they're going to beat any of those teams. Or if they end up losing out on the division, they will almost certainly be the 5 seed, which means you're playing against whoever wins the NFC South. Guys, I will take the Cowboys or take the Eagles minus whatever it is, 6 points probably, against whichever NFC South team that they end up playing in that first playoff game. So I think it's very unlikely they lose in that first round. I will take them to win the Super Bowl, even though it will be an incredibly tall task to beat one of, maybe both of, the Cowboys and the 49ers. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll talk to Darren Dreger about the St. Louis Blues and all of the news that surrounds them. But next, the Jakub Vrana decision. We didn't really make much of it, Alex, because it felt like it was time to move on from Jakub Vrana. Did that decision and the lack of success from players like Vrana over the last few years play into ultimately Craig Berube's downfall here in St. Louis? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
I definitely think that the Jakub Vrana decision and how that played out over the last few days certainly didn't help Craig Berube. I think Doug Armstrong really wanted to see more from Jakub Vrana and see him get an opportunity and something that Craig Berube wasn't really willing or interested in providing.
That was Frank Saravali. Savali? Not sure.
Well,
He doesn't seem interested in getting the Vrana decision, the name correct.
Saravali.
So here we are. He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. That was via the Daily Faceoffs podcast. Alex, I don't think we've really given a whole lot of thought to, hey, how much did Jakub Vrana's lack of success here in St. Louis have to do with the firing of Craig Berube? And frankly, I think he's overstating things there. However, I do wonder if there is something to the notion of guys like Vrana, whether it's him, Kyrou, Mike Hoffman. You look at some of the puck-moving defensemen that have struggled here. Some of those types of players. Now, whether you think that this is Berube's fault, the system's fault, whatever, or if it's on the players, it's a separate conversation. But I do wonder if there's something to the idea that those guys and their lack of success long-term here in St. Louis, maybe that has caused a little bit of skepticism on whether or not Berube was the long-term fix here in St. Louis.
I mean, I'm sure it's a massive piece of the pie as to why Craig Berube's not here when Doug Armstrong saw the success of Jakub Vrana last season, and then this season just sees a completely different player. But in defense of Craig Berube, I would say Jakub Vrana is a completely different player. Now, Vrana was getting massive opportunities playing with Pavel Buchnevich in the top six, but you also didn't have guys that were outplaying him in the last season. And this season, Jake Neighbors outplayed Jakub Vrana.
Absolutely.
Frankly, at times, Alexei Toropchenko outplayed Jakub Vrana. In that game against the Chicago Blackhawks, Hugh McGing outplayed Jakub Vrana. So I can understand why Craig Berube looked at it and said, look, if you're not going to give me the effort, you don't deserve to be in my top nine.
Totally agree. And by the way, like if you want to just go and extend this a little further, Hoffman is a name that people bring up. Hoffman here in St. Louis had in his one season 17 goals and 36 points and was a +2 on the ice, believe it or not.
Wow, that is surprising.
It's shocking. Like when I looked at the
Especially
number,
because
I
of
was
power
like,
play.
he was a plus when he was on the ice? How? That seems impossible. Meanwhile, since then, in more games, 67 games each of the past two seasons for Montreal, only played in 52 here for the Blues, has fewer goals, 15 and 14, the same number of assists, 20 in each season, fewer points, 35 and 34, and was a -24 and a -10 on the ice in those two seasons for Montreal. So he was worse in his next stop over two seasons than he was here in St. Louis when he was with the Blues. So it's worth noting that one of the players that we use as an example of why it doesn't work for forwards in that system for Berube went on to another system and had even less success there.
And Mike
I think
Hoffman
it's
did
really,
too. Mike Hoffman did two systems that didn't work. He went to Montreal following the Blues and was not good, and then went to San Jose and was not good.
And he's points-wise been better in San Jose.
Somebody's got to score on that team.
100%. I'm totally with you. I think the real criticism is not about the forwards so much as it is the defensemen.
That's where I'm at.
If you want to look at Vince Dunn and the success or lack of here in St. Louis and how it has worked to a crazy high degree once he got up to Seattle, okay, fair criticism. Torrey Krug worked really well in Boston, came here to St. Louis. To be honest, hasn't really worked so far. Perunovic, his lack of success so far in the lineup, or lack of opportunities, however you want to look at that. I think a lot of that is injury related. But Jake Wallman having success up in Detroit. Like a lot of these guys seem to go elsewhere and actually have success with their new teams. That hasn't happened when it comes to the forwards.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. And I was reading it on TSN Sportsnet article last night about the Berube firing. And then I was listening to a ton of different podcasts earlier today. Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts, John Scott on his podcast. And everybody was talking about, they were focused on Jordan Kyrou. But that article that I read with Sportsnet said, maybe the focus should also be on the use of these mobile defensemen. Because one thing is very clear. Doug Armstrong and his scouting staff value puck-moving, smaller stature defensemen. Hence the Torrey Krug and Nick Leddy. Hence, look at their farm system. Like, not only do you have two smaller stature guys in Buchinger and Gaudette, you've got a ton of dudes, the Theo Lindstein that they just drafted in the first round, and then Vince Dunn and Jake Wallman, who are now having success elsewhere. And then you looked at Scott Perunovic. And again, defensive Craig Berube, I'm not going to put Scott Perunovic up yet because he hasn't had enough games. But I personally thought in the last couple of weeks, Scott Perunovic has looked really good and deserved an opportunity to play over guys at times like Torrey Krug and Nick Leddy. And if I'm Doug Armstrong, looking at the big picture with my team, I got to figure out what this Scott Perunovich is. I've got to be able to find out if I can get the best out of this puck-moving defenseman, because if not, maybe I need to change my strategy in the minor leagues. So welcome a new coach that says, we'll find a way to get these mobile defensemen involved, because like it or not, that's the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
Cale Makar, Quinn
I
Hughes.
think that we have overstated how much these smaller, faster forwards
That's
are
what
impacting
everybody
the league.
is drafting.
It's the defense. The defense is where it's happening, where the change has really taken place. It's almost like defensive ends in the NFL. You look at what they used to be, man. They used to be 6'5", 270 pounds, just monsters coming off of the edge. Now you look at it, it's Micah Parsons. Like, it's guys that are the old school linebackers. Like, Lawrence Taylor has become the norm. That type of a player, where it's just speed, 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 speed. That's puck-moving defenseman now.
And, like, if you go to the 2023 draft, I'm just sifting back through all of this. The defensemen that were taken in the first round, all but one are 6 foot or smaller, including the guy that the Blues drafted, that Theo Lindstein. So this is the way of the league. Adam Fox, Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar. This is what teams value. Now, I personally still value size. I think size is very important in the National Hockey League. Vegas, I mean, look at the guy in Buffalo with, what's his face, Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin. Like, size is very important on the defensive side, but every team's got a puck-moving, smaller stature, mobile defenseman. And I do think that the downfall of Craig Berube was not finding ways to get the best out of those smaller stature defensemen, because both Dunn and Wallman had opportunities in the top pair prior to them being moved, and it never panned out.
And some of this might be timing, right? Like, Vince Dunn has talked openly about how, hey, he needed to have a change of scenery before he could really unlock
Wallman too.
Who he is as a player. Jake Wallman, I thought he played like a forward here in St. Louis. He got to Detroit, and even, I don't know if he's still playing that way or not, but he's having success with whatever it is that he's doing while he's up there, and he's playing like 23 minutes a night. It's crazy, man. I didn't think he was capable of that. So some of it might just be as simple as these guys had a change of scenery. It kicked them in the behind a little bit and got them going in a way that they couldn't or wouldn't whenever they were here in St. Louis. But if I'm Doug Armstrong and I'm saying to myself, hey, you keep complaining about the talent that we've got on the blue line. Man, these guys are talented. They've had success elsewhere. Why aren't we extracting that here in St. Louis? Why am I not seeing them play that way while they are in a Blue Note uniform? I would imagine that's at least part of what led to this decision. A bigger part, of course, like the number one, blinking with red lights, alarm bells. Why is this team not playing hard? That is why you had to make the move. But then you get into the other explanations. It's the puck-moving defenseman. It's a smaller forward. It's unlocking Jordan Kyrou prior to that no-trade clause kicking in. Like, it's all of this other stuff, and you just needed to make a change.
Well, and just to play devil's advocate and push back on what we're arguing here, because I do believe that that's part of it. If you look at all those teams that I just mentioned to you with those smaller puck-moving defensemen, look at who their line mates are. Jake Wallman is playing with Moritz Seider, who is expected to be like a Norris Trophy candidate on a yearly basis. He's still young. Quinn Hughes was not this Quinn Hughes last season. They traded for Philip Ronick, who was not being utilized properly, and now that pairing is great. Cale Makar hit his best games by playing with Devon Taves, who is a bigger stay-at-home defenseman. The reason that a Dunn and a Wallman may not have worked here, not is just because, well, they didn't get the opportunities with the head coach. They weren't playing with the proper people that
also
in the personnel.
Maybe Krug or Perunovich should be playing with Parayko then.
Yeah,
well,
they kind of
we've been saying Perunovich since preseason.
That's what Doug Armstrong told us 2 years ago on the show, was that ideally he would like to see somebody like Krug or Perunovich playing with Colton Parayko.
And they've tried Krug with Parayko, and it just hasn't worked.
It was also very brief, and sometimes you need a little bit more chemistry together.
Stretch, I would say.
I don't know that it would have worked. It probably would have failed, but just all of these things as we're trying to explore what happened. Why are we here where a Stanley Cup winning coach was fired? All of this stuff is probably what was going through Doug Armstrong's mind as he was making the decision. Coming up next, we got to get to Darren Dreger, hockey insider for TSN. What has he heard on why the Blues decided to make this move? How does Jordan Kyrou play into that discussion? We'll talk to Darren Dreger, one of the best hockey insiders in North America, next year on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We're always happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline when Darren Dreger, the hockey insider for TSN, is on the other line. A few days ago, Alex, we saw the clip from Darren Dreger on TSN saying, hey, watch St. Louis. There may be something coming there. And a couple of days later, the Blues announced that they were firing head coach Craig Berube. Darren Dreger joins us now here on the show to react to the news that Berube has been let go. Darren, we appreciate the time as always. Let's start out with this. What do you believe, based on your reporting, your understanding, was the biggest reason that led to Craig Berube's dismissal here in St. Louis?
Yeah, just guys, number one, thanks for having me, but just the overall play of the St. Louis Blues. And now you can make the case that, if you look back to the start of the year, I think the projection was that, this team was likely going to be more or less a middle-of-the-pack team. And when you look at the standing, that's basically what you're seeing, and there's promise that this team is potentially going to be a playoff-worthy team. But they're not playing the way that we traditionally are used to seeing Blues teams play. Hard checking, heavy hockey, that sort of thing, at least not with any sort of level of consistency. And then you pair that with some of the underperforming players that you guys, I'm sure, have spent a lot of time talking about this season. And I think it just led to the position of change for Doug Armstrong. Look, Army historically has shown he's not afraid to make a big trade, right? He's not afraid to do that. This we know. But I think it just flat out came down to, okay, well, Craig Berube has had a terrific run with the St. Louis Blues, a very decorated coach, helped bring a Stanley Cup to St. Louis. There's everything about this man to like, but every coach in the National Hockey League has a shelf life and an expiry date, and unfortunately, that time is now for Craig Berube. You guys know how difficult this decision would have been for Doug Armstrong and, by extension, ownership, but it was a collection of things ultimately that led to the dismissal earlier this week.
Darren, do you feel like the Blues are kind of forced into this decision because of the roster construction? Because you mentioned how the Blues play. We all know how they play, but when you look at the roster from top to bottom, it doesn't feel like that it matches the identity.
No, I get that. But in part, and I'm reminded of this by experienced coaches all over the league, you can look at the roster as you identify and say, okay, well, if the design is to continue to play the way that the successful teams do play in the Western Conference, again, that heavier, hard-checking, hard forechecking style, you'd better have the personnel on the ice to be able to do that. And I understand that, and I agree with that to a point. But you also have to have the will individually, no matter the look of the player. There's a certain way that you have to play consistently to win in the National Hockey League. And even top contending teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Edmonton Oilers go through stretches where they don't play that way, which makes you question whether or not they're a top contending team. And I'm reminded of that on a consistent basis. And I'm also told by these experienced coaches that at the end of the day, yes, the player has to initiate and has to execute, but the coach has to find a way to get that message through to those players so that they do execute on a consistent basis.
When you look in, and I'm only putting this player's name here because, Darren, everybody around the league is asking about him. When you just described that type of player and the will to go out there and prove it, do you see that in Jordan Kyrou?
Well, what I see in Jordan Kyrou is a high-skilled player, and there wouldn't be a team in the National Hockey League that wouldn't love to have that skill set. Can he provide more of what we've already talked about? Yeah, 100%. But he's still a young, developing player. I don't know that. Well, I don't think we've seen the complete package in Jordan Kyrou just yet. I think I could say the same thing of Robbie Thomas and go through the list. What I had heard, and I believe to be true because I trust my source on this prior to the coaching decision being made earlier this week, was that when you look at that roster, it's pretty obvious that the Blues need another defenseman, and in a perfect world, they'd add a gritty forward, right? Somebody could help that penalty kill and bring on more of what we've already established here. I'm not convinced that Jordan Kyrou can't play some of what we've already talked about, but that can't be a sole focus because we know what his skill set is. And, but I'm not letting him off the hook here, fellas. Don't get me wrong.
I hope that every player in that room took a hard look in the mirror, because anytime there's a coaching change, and we've seen that a few times, there's also a coach bump. And I would expect that from the St. Louis Blues, maybe starting tonight against the Ottawa Senators. But this has to be gut check time for every player in that dressing room.
I want to stick with Kyrou for just another minute, Darren, because he's making $8 million. He and Robert Thomas now are basically the faces of the next era of St. Louis Blues hockey. And so far this year, Jordan Kyrou, I think has actually played a better all-around game for the most part, but only 5 goals. And that's what ends up getting the criticism here in St. Louis. How much of this do you think just comes down to, hey, Jordan Kyrou's no trade clause kicks in here in the next year or so, and they need to find out whether or not he's capable of doing all of the things that you're discussing? And the best way to find that out is by making that change at the head coach so you eliminate that variable.
No, I get that. And as we're having this conversation again on the heels of firing a very popular figure in St. Louis sports and Craig Berube, I can appreciate that position. Here's the reality check, though, here, fellas. If Jordan Kyrou doesn't return to the offensive player that we know that he can and has been, good luck moving that contract. I mean, let's just be frank here, right? It's not like teams are lining up to take on $8 million deals. Now, again, I think if you investigate the skill set, I think that there's still a lot of belief inside the organization that he's going to be a St. Louis Blue for a long time, and he's going to be one of their all-round leaders, but needs to be an offensive leader. You know, maybe he finds his game offensively in the next little bit, and he finds that balance where, as you have described, he's got a little bit more all-round play in his toolbox, but maybe the offense starts to come for him, and we're not having this conversation as we creep closer to the March 8th trade deadline or into the offseason. If we're having this conversation, then St. Louis has a problem, because that's going to be a tough contract despite his age and what we think he's capable of.
So, Darren, one more on the coaching side, and then I want to get back to the defense that you mentioned. But, you know, Doug Armstrong said yesterday that it's an open job interview. Drew Bannister, of course, gets the interim tag, but they're going to be looking around the National Hockey League. Are there names that come to mind that you think would make sense for the Blues? And the one that so many Blues fans keep bringing up is Joel Quenneville.
Well, yeah, it makes sense, and there's no doubt about that. Historically speaking, we know that Joel is a good coach, and he's done well with experienced rosters. So I can understand the connection, because when you look around the hockey world, you know, there aren't that many coaches where you go, okay, hold on a minute. You know, there's a guy with a wealth of experience. That makes a lot of sense. You know, let's look at those who've been pushed out recently. I think Dean Evison is an excellent coach. I think he's going to find a bench at some point. If not this year, then he'll be a commodity certainly next year. You know, Jay Woodcroft has a winning record. You know, he was dispatched because it was basically cup or bust for the Edmonton Oilers, and it turned out to be more bust, and now it looks like they're back on that cup run with Chris Knobloch leading the charge. The problem that you have with Joel Quenneville is most obvious.
Yep.
Is the commissioner of the National Hockey League going to green light him to return to an NHL bench? As you guys know, there's still a lot swirling around off ice the Chicago Blackhawks. There's this lawsuit. There's this being investigated, that being investigated. I'm not convinced, as we're having this interview, that Joel Quenneville is going to be let back into the NHL anytime soon. I feel like he's paid a price. Maybe the commissioner doesn't feel that he's paid it enough yet. We'll see. So there are some things that may stand in the way of a hire like that.
Just as a follow-up on the coaching question, Darren, and these are just names that have been floated here in St. Louis as well. No idea how connected they actually are to the job. But Bruce Boudreau is one name that has been brought up, and then Gerard Gallant another, both of whom, of course, free agents at the moment. Do you think either of them would make sense for this team?
Well, they both want to coach, and again, they both have experience with rosters that have been similar to the St. Louis Blues. You know, I don't know how much recent bias comes into play here, right? I know that Bruce Boudreau wants nothing more than to coach again in the National Hockey League. He was desperate to get back in, and he got back in with the Vancouver Canucks, and that didn't end well. And now you see, Rick Tocchet doing what he's doing in Vancouver. Gerard Gallant has been noted as being a player-friendly coach. I think that's an unfair label because, his talent goes much deeper than that. Turk Gallant is going to coach in the NHL. So I wouldn't have any problem attaching his name as a possibility to what might come down the road in St. Louis. But, fellas, let's also give Drew Bannister the opportunity here, right? Drew Bannister has paid his dues. He was a fantastic coach in the Ontario Hockey League. He's been a really good coach at the American Hockey League level. He's a hard-nosed, structured guy. He's going to get the attention of this group. And if there's a modest coaching bump, great. But what if things go well and the St. Louis Blues make a hard push here? We're not even at the midway point of the regular season. Why shouldn't he be considered as he would be considered as a top candidate? It's too soon yet to hire the next coach of the St. Louis Blues.
Absolutely. And Darren, going back just a couple more minutes with Darren Dreger, and we appreciate the time as always. Going back to your comment on the defense to where your source believes that they've got to find a way to fix that defense. The guy that I've brought up a lot here in St. Louis is Noah Hannafin. Is it possible to fix this defense for Doug Armstrong via trade free agency, or do you believe this is going to have to be via draft?
Oh, well, I think he'd like to help it via trade. Fix it is a big word. Fix in capitals because, there's a lot of general managers swimming in that pool. I mean, have a look at the Maple Leafs blue line for a moment. That's a blue line. Again, it's a top contending team that needs some attention, no doubt about that. And we're making comparisons to the defense that won last year, and that, of course, is the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, those are big, strong dudes. I think that Vancouver was smart in grabbing Nikita Zadorov as quickly as they did. They didn't pay a king's ransom in a third and a fifth to acquire him, but that's typical of Jimmy Rutherford. Dive in early, fill a need. If something better pops into the market in the future, well, great. Otherwise, you've got a player in early who can, kind of adapt to the surroundings and the coaching of Tocchet and the style of play there. Doug Armstrong, I started the interview this way, and as we wrap up, I'll kind of end it this way too. He's not going down without a fight here, fellas. You think that he enjoyed any part of having to fire a good friend and a fantastic coach in Craig Berube? A zero chance. He is the architect of this roster. He's going to add some pieces. Whether they're big enough like a Noah Hannafin, again, you need a trade partner and a trade fit. It's not as easy as snapping your fingers and making deals, but I'm pretty confident in saying that the Blues team that we're going to see take the ice tonight isn't the Blues team that's going to finish the regular season.
And that's where I wanted to go with you next, Darren. We'll finish out on this, and we appreciate the time as always. Darren Dreger, our guest, Find his work over at TSN. We're talking about this a little bit later in the show. Wanted to get your thoughts on it. Do you think, and clearly you do you know of any players that are playing for their Blues careers essentially over the next 3 months where they could potentially be dealt depending on what their performance looks like prior to the trade deadline?
I honestly, I don't, and I'm always careful to not randomly throw out names because what we often do? We look at the contracts. And if you're a pending unrestricted free agent, chances are that you're a player in play. And it doesn't matter if you're the best team in hockey or a middle-of-the-pack team like the St. Louis Blues. We've addressed what we think their needs are. If something bigger surfaces, then it also has to be cap-related too, right? It's very much a dollar in, dollar out type of league. It's still early in the process. I'm sure that St. Louis's roster has some interesting pieces. I look at the Philadelphia Flyers as an example. Could there be a fit between Philadelphia and St. Louis? We've spent a lot of time talking about Sean Walker, a right-shot defenseman. Nick Seeler, a big, strong, defensive D-man. Maybe one of those two guys could help the St. Louis Blues. Look at what they've got up front. A young player like Morgan Frost has had trouble fitting in there with the makeup of John Tortorella and the Philadelphia Flyers. Could he add, an injection with a change of scenery? Those are guys that I know are in play. But from St. Louis's standpoint, I haven't heard anyone specifically that's out there.
Darren, you're the absolute best, man. You've been more than generous with your time. You always are whenever we ask you to come on. Thank you so much for hopping on with us today and what was obviously a big reaction day here in St. Louis. Nothing but the best to you and the fam. Hopefully we'll talk with you again soon.
You bet. I look forward to it. Happy holidays to everybody out that way.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Same
Darren.
to you. That's Darren Dreger, hockey insider for TSN. You will not find anybody better on this kind of stuff than Darren Dreger. Again, he was the one that I think we got the first idea that maybe something was coming because of Dreger's report on TSN a few days prior to Craig Berube being fired. Alex, what was your biggest reaction to what he had to say there?
Well, I think it's the defensive side of him saying that his sources have told him, like, the Blues need to fix their defense and they need to find another gritty forward who can help out their overall play. But it's that final statement he made. This is not going to be the same team that we see in the next year or so. And I know we've said that before, and contracts are a lot harder to pull out. But he's right. As much frustration, which I've made it very clear that I have, and I know a lot of Blues fans have with Doug Armstrong, guy is not going to walk away from this going down without a fight. He nearly pulled off the trade last season, or last offseason, that might have fixed this defense. So I agree with him there, but there are changes that needed to take place, and him talking about making sure that you get the right personnel and the right mindset, which is part of the reason we saw Craig Berube let go, it makes a whole lot of sense.
My biggest thing was what he said about Jordan Kyrou. He said, hey, if you don't see him get back to the offensive game that he had, you ain't trading him. That guy doesn't have value if he doesn't have the offensive game. And he's 100% correct, which is why I wonder if they're just going to say to that top line, hey, go do your thing. Go do your thing. And if it's not structurally as sound as what we want it to be, so be it. Last year, this dude put up 37 goals. 37 goals.
When he started off the season, eerily similar to as he has this season.
He could do that again. He could easily get back to 30 goals or more this season and get up to 70 or more points this season. But he's got to find his game. And that may mean him not being as good defensively, man. It might mean that. It may mean he's having to cheat a little bit to be able to get even more of those breakaway opportunities than he's had so far. And most of his problems really on those has been execution more than it has opportunities. But I think eventually those are going to start going in for him. I will be very curious to see how that line performs with Buchnevich, Thomas, and Kyrou. That is where the spotlight is for me. It's obviously on the compete. It's on the passion. It's on the accountability. All of those things matter. But at the end of the day, man, we're not judging Jordan Kyrou by whether or not he's getting takeaways in the neutral zone. You will look at the end of the season and you will look at the back of the hockey card and you will say, what do the points look like? Because that's his job. His job is to produce points for the St. Louis Blues. And if he's doing that, if he's putting up 30-plus goals, we're going to look back. Other general managers will look back and say, all right, he did his job for the Blues. If he finishes the season with 15 to 20 goals, he doesn't have value. Not for this team, not for other teams around the NHL. He knows that, you know that, I know that, the listeners right now in our audience know that.
And I double-checked it, so I was wrong. The no-trade kicks in after next season,
Correct.
Not this season. So you got another season of this, but you're right. It's this coach that Drew Bannister is going to take over to see if he can get the best out of Jordan Kyrou, and then if they decide to go to another more established head coach, his task is going to be Jordan Kyrou, and that to me is going to be the biggest self-evaluation by this Blues front office for the next year and a half.
The last thing that I wanted to get to, I did find it interesting how highly he spoke of Drew Bannister. That is not by mistake. He doesn't just do that. Now, the hockey world is a very tight-knit community, and when you get an opportunity like this, there are not very many of them. There's 32, and there's even fewer that come available on a year-in, year-out basis. There's like 5 to 7, typically, on any given year that become available. So when a guy like Bannister gets the opportunity, you typically hear people speak highly of him. But Dreger said, hey, man, this is a guy that's going to come in, and he's going to try to tighten up the ship. So I will be very curious to see what it looks like and whether or not maybe he is able to go out there and prove himself. I would be betting against him becoming the full-time head coach here in St. Louis, but it will be interesting to see what it looks like.
And not taking anything away. Somebody texted and said, why do you guys stop talking about other coaches? Give Drew Bannister the benefit of the doubt. We're only talking about other coaches because Doug Armstrong said this is going to be a wide open search. Yeah, Drew Bannister has just as good of a shot, if not a better shot than other people, because he's going to get to look at this team. But if you're Doug Armstrong, you got to make sure that this is the right decision, because if you're him in this position, I'm not sure how many more coaches you're going to have the opportunity to hire to try and get this thing right.
Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we will dive into the junk drawer. But next, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters. Some interesting news taking place around the NFL, including one future Hall of Fame coach that might just be on more than thin ice right now. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they host the Ottawa Senators, and we'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Carver for Puck Drop at 7. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It's time for some NFL quick hitters. And boys, tonight we have one hell of a football game. Chargers versus the Raiders. You can't just go into Las Vegas and expect to beat this version of the Las Vegas Raiders. It's Easton Stick getting his first start tonight for the LA Chargers.
Someone get Easton's joystick ready.
Did you feel good about that?
It's a video game. I mean, there's not really.
Terrible.
There's not many ways
Let's
you can
just be
go
honest,
with
that was
Easton's
terrible.
stick.
That was bad.
Someone fiddled with it. Oh, let's go.
Do you find anything compelling about this football game?
I'm not going to watch this game.
Only fantasy purposes for me because I have Devontae Adams.
Keenan Allen, by the way, expected to miss this one as well.
So Chargers just can we just fire Brandon Staley and be done with it?
Rip the Band-Aid off.
I actually think this is when it happens because it's a Thursday night game, so you'll have 10 days prior to the next game.
This should have freaking happened, what is this, week 15? 15 weeks ago.
I'm totally with you. The next game that they play is the following Saturday against the Buffalo Bills, so it does not get easier from here for the LA Chargers. I think they will be the landing spot for the next man that we need to discuss, which is Bill Belichick. Alex, according to a report from Boston, this comes from Tom Curran, who is the most respected, reputable reporter on the New England Patriots. He was the one that, before anybody else really up in New England, was saying, hey, Tom Brady might actually be leaving the Patriots. And now he said that the Patriots, quote, have already decided they will be moving on from Bill Belichick at the end of the season. They did so after their loss to the Colts in Germany earlier this year. He said that Belichick is, quote, beyond the point where he could save his job once the Patriots season comes to an end. Alex, where do you think he ends up? Where do you think Bill Belichick will be next year? And it sounds surely like this is going to be the end of his road in New England.
Chargers. Plain and simple.
So too?
I think it's Chargers. I think you got the defense that Bill Belichick would want with Khalil Mack, with Bosa, with Derwin James. You got a really good defense. You're going to have a decent draft pick this year, and you've got a quarterback and an offense. So if Dallas wasn't having the success they're having, I would say the Cowboys would be number one. But since they're having success, it's going to be the Chargers because Bill's going to try and get to the most wins by a head coach in NFL history, and then he's going to call it a career, and the Chargers do that for him.
You know what I would find really interesting, by the way? I don't think it'll happen, but the Jets. That would be a fun one.
Ooh.
Rodgers would not.
Yeah, I was going to say.
You don't think so?
No. Hell no.
I don't know. I would find that one to be interesting.
You think Belichick's all in on the darkness retreat and Aaron Rodgers?
Well, you think Belichick's all in on the Rodgers saying, I want all of these old washed-up receivers?
I would love to have a bleep you to the New England Patriots and do it in their division with Aaron Rodgers and that defense, the talent that they have assembled. Dude, they could win the Super Bowl next year with Bill Belichick as the head coach.
I don't believe it. Not with Rodgers.
I don't think they're going to fire their head coach. I think they're just going to keep everything because of Aaron Rodgers. I think they're going to keep the OC in place and everything. But that is a team that if he was fired, not traded, I could find to be an interesting match.
If I'm Bill, I'm staying in the AFC. Maybe not staying in the same division as the Patriots, but I'm staying in the AFC because I'm going to give you the big middle finger that...
I don't know where else he could go. It's either the Chargers or if the Jets were to open up.
Oh, no, Washington's NFC.
Yeah, those would be the two.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't go to Washington, man. That would be sad.
What if he goes to the Colts?
I think he wants
They just got their coach. I like their coach. I think he's done a really good job this year.
I don't think so. I think he sucks.
I think it's because his quarterback's hurt. I think
she looks healthy to me.
Somebody mentioned the Bills. That would be an interesting one.
Ooh.
That would be fun, actually.
I would not move on from McDermott.
No, I wouldn't either.
Belichick. I don't think Belichick's having success wherever he goes next. I'm out on the Belichick experience.
I think he will have success for a short period of time if the roster is already in place.
And that's why I think the Chargers are it. And you're going to get a really good draft pick where Belichick's not picking that draft pick.
I think he's going to be in charge of the draft wherever he goes. I think that will be
You think with the Chargers?
Yes.
Ooh. Well,
Yeah,
I
and that's
think
why.
if you bring in Bill
Congrats on your
Belichick, you
defenseman.
are signing up for the full Bill Belichick experience, and that includes him being in charge of all of the decision making.
And that shouldn't be the case because
Agreed.
we've seen where it's gotten them.
But if you are a team that already has the roster in place, this is why I found the Jets to be such a compelling option for him, then he can win you a Super Bowl in year 1 or 2. Similar to the Tom Brady decision, where he needed the roster in place around him. He went to Tampa because he looked at the roster and said, if you replace their quarterback with me, we're winning the Super Bowl. I think Bill Belichick could do that with one of these rosters. T-Bone, sorry, I cut you off.
And I think it would be the Chargers because I think wherever he goes, he needs not just the roster, but the franchise quarterback as well. And Herbert, though now I think more questions are being raised about Justin Herbert, he is a franchise quarterback. And at times he has played like a top 5 quarterback in the league. So I think it would be the Chargers. And that's the kind of splash that they would make because everybody else, like, I don't hear the compelling case for them outside of the Jets. The Jets would be interesting, but like Washington, how the hell are you going to sell Bill Belichick? Yeah. You don't have a franchise quarterback. Every team in the NFC South that should fire their head coach, you don't have a compelling case to hire him. So I think it will be the LA Chargers. I'm just out on the Belichick experience. I don't think he has success wherever he goes. I think football's passed him by in terms of what he can do with the NFL.
The Patriots defense has been really good.
I don't think he's the guy anymore. Okay. And I believe that ever since like year 2 since Brady's been gone. And part of that is because he's been developing his own roster. And if he wants that control, I'm definitely not hiring him.
If I'm him, I don't want to coach anymore. I don't know if I want my legacy to be going to another team and then people look at me like, yeah, you were washed up. What if you don't?
We know how these guys think. He believes that he will.
Look, Bill, just go enjoy retirement, my man. Go see Boca Raton.
He wants to be the all-time winningest head coach in the NFL. That's part of it. I'm totally with you on that.
Put a banana hammock on and let it flow, Bill.
Move to Florida.
Let it flow. Double B's.
Somebody on the text line's bringing up the Bears. I don't think that makes any sense for Belichick at all.
It doesn't make sense if you're the Bears trying to get Justin Fields the best production either.
Or the next quarterback. You want to pair your next quarterback with a bright, young offensive mind. Like Ben Johnson, the coordinator for the Detroit Lions. That's the kind of hire you make if you're the Bears. You're not going out and getting a, 75-year-old head coach who wins with defense and special teams.
If Belichick goes to the Bears, the 1st and 4th overall pick are going to be a linebacker and a defensive lineman. Be like, what the hell, man? Marvin Harrison was right here.
1985. Yeah,
what the hell, Bill?
All right, somebody yesterday mentioned this. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. The Chiefs route to the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay.
It's not happening, man. They lost to the freaking Packers.
Went out, which means beating the vaunted New England Patriots, the Vegas Raiders that we were just talking about, the Cincinnati Bengals without their starting quarterback, and the LA Chargers with Easton Stick. They could probably do that, right?
Joystick.
Yeah.
Baltimore needs to lose to San Francisco and Miami. And Miami needs to lose to Dallas. You guys sure the Chiefs aren't going to be the number 1 seed?
Yeah, man, they're not going to be the number 1 seed.
Are we sure?
Yeah.
I bet you $100 right now they're not.
Didn't you say in this?
I would have to get odds.
Didn't you say in the scenario that the Chiefs would have to win out?
Yeah, they're against the terrible opponents on their schedule.
Oh, yeah, the terrible opponents. Because that juggernaut that was the Green Bay Packers.
Hey, they've been pretty good.
Oh, get the hell out of here. Yeah, because they played against the Chiefs. They looked good.
Just making sure that we're all on the same page that they're not going to be the number 1 seed.
Oh, yeah, you're on this page.
I think that the Ravens will get it. I think the Chiefs will be the number 2 seed in the AFC going into the postseason. I think the Dolphins are going through a tough stretch right now.
Especially if
I
they've got the Jets this week. I could totally see them losing that game.
Especially with
then
no
they've got
Hill.
Dallas. Could totally see them losing that game. Then at Baltimore, expect them to lose that game. And then at home against the Buffalo Bills, which might be a game for the Bills to get into the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins lose out.
I can't wait to watch Jake Browning beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
As much as I should be able to look at that Chiefs schedule and go, yeah, 4-0. This team keeps laying eggs across the path to the playoffs.
Because Travis Kelce can't catch a damn ball.
Tony doesn't know how to line up like a 5th grader.
Did you see the new quote from Kadarius Toney?
Now, what the hell did he say now?
He said, I was told yesterday that one of the officials warned me that I wasn't lining up on the line of scrimmage, but I don't think that ever happened. Tony, dude, what are you doing, man?
We talked about this with Donnie on the Last Minute Blues podcast. I've never seen a player stare at the ball and be like, yeah, Yeah, I'm good. I'm not offsides. When he's looking behind him.
So not just stare at the ball, have to turn his head behind him to see the ball.
He sees the entire offensive line lined up behind him, and he's,
What's he think
I'm good.
You think they're doing what you used to do as a kid in the backyard where you, like, draw the line of scrimmage and then you move the ball back a little bit to get that extra protection, because there's no blocking?
The worst thing that the Chiefs have ever done isn't trading away Tyreek Hill. It's trading for Kadarius Toney.
That guy gives me heartburn every Sunday.
Now I know why Harvey
Alex
doesn't
and
want to keep the
T-Bone,
band
I'm
together.
Also, he looks always confused on the bench. He's like, what's going on?
Coming up in 10 minutes or so, who are the players that are fighting to stay in a Blues uniform over the next 3 months? We'll talk about that, but next, the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Alex, I need a ruling from you, okay?
Okay.
There are
Not
two
sure I'm the guy to go to.
thieves in Denver that are trying to figure out if they're going to have a felony over their heads or not. And I need you to tell me what your ruling would be in this scenario if you were the judge. So let me give you the information. Two men have been convicted of theft for stealing more than $2,000 worth of merchandise from Kohl's after they are arguing in court that they deserve a lesser charge. These men were 50 and 37 years old, Michael and Byron, again in the Denver area out in Colorado.
Father-son combo?
Nope, different families.
Oh, okay.
They stole from a Kohl's store earlier this year, and they have been dubbed the, quote, KitchenAid Mixer Crew because of the high-end KitchenAid appliances, in addition to brand-name shoes and clothing that they stole from the store.
Should have went with the Sticky Bandits.
They do have an interesting defense, in my opinion. They have claimed that they should not be charged with felonies because the items that were stolen added up to $2,000 and $2,094. But two things that should be taken into account in their opinion. The items were on sale. That is not a part of the $2,094. And they had Kohl's cash. So when you add up the Kohl's cash and the sales that should have been taken off of the original prices.
Why didn't they use the Kohl's cash?
Well, they stole it.
But you're using as defense. Well, I had Kohl's cash, but I decided to
Yeah, it would
steal
have
it
taken
anyway.
down the overall amount of money that they would have had to spend on these things. In your opinion, Alex?
Yeah, you're guilty. Go to your felony. You're idiots.
Yeah, I'm in those
You're
Alex.
idiots.
Why? It's on sale.
How do you walk
No.
into a court and be like, look, Your Honor, I understand that I got a felony, but I could have paid for these if I wanted to. I had Kohl's cash, but I decided to do it anyway.
And it was 40% off.
That's the important part.
No, it's not.
Set the Kohl's cash aside for a moment, although I'm willing to listen.
Go to jail, you idiot.
The discount, because we all know, right? Like you walk into a Kohl's, whatever you're buying is probably 20% off. You end up taking down from that top dollar figure, probably was like $1,800 that they stole.
You should go to jail for your thought on
That's
this.
not a felony. That's a misdemeanor.
No, felony.
You're an idiot.
Felony.
You know what? You should go to prison with
Because
them for that
because-
I
take.
think they're going to get this taken down. This
I
is a
don't think
really,
they
this
are.
is
I
a
don't
really
think
good
they are.
defense.
Because the
If they
product
do, that
itself-
judge should be gone.
Yeah.
Whatever his attorneys are making, they deserve more.
No.
Certainly
Well,
more
they'll give
than
them in
the
Kohl's cash.
$2,000.
They'll say we could have paid you guys, but we didn't have the money. But I have Kohl's cash. What a stupid. The lawyers had to walk in and be like, all right, so what are you guys' stance on this? Look, we're not guilty. Okay, well, what happened? Did somebody put it in your card? No. We took it, but I had Kohl's cash, and I could have paid for this. But I said, I want the thrill.
Would this be like the same argument like if you robbed a bank for like $2,000, but you said, wait, wasn't $2,000, I had $20 in my back pocket.
No, 1800,
No.
1880.
Kind of with the Kohl's cash, honestly. Kind of similar.
Exactly.
I hope they put them in prison.
The discount is the part that I find to be interesting. I think that they should be discounted.
No.
A
What, so
discounted
should you be
rate.
able to steal for sale items?
No, when you steal, it should be listed at the for sale price. And
Yeah.
that is what you're charged with. If I steal a
No, the for sale-
necklace, for example,
You're
right?
still
a
stealing.
$5,000 necklace that is listed as 10% off. That necklace is now worth $4,500. It's not worth $5,000. It's worth $4,500.
No.
I'll still be charged with felony either way. But
Stupid people, man. He's got to throw them in.
he's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, who are the players on the Blues right now that are fighting to continue to be on the Blues 3 months from now, depending on how they play in that stretch of time? We'll tell you next here on 101 ESPN.
I don't think he's trading Rob Thomas. I don't think he's trading Colton Parayko. I think there's a few guys in his team that he's not going to move. But I refuse to believe he's not trying some other things. And if it doesn't change, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he does.
That was Elliot Friedman on NHL Network yesterday, alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, I do believe that this team is going to make changes prior to the end of the season. Most likely via trade. There's going to be some guys that are here today that will not be here at the end of the year. But who are they? Who's playing right now to be in a Blue Note uniform by this time next year? Alex, I think as we talked about earlier today with Darren Dreger, you could really point to any of the guys that are unrestricted free agents. They're probably somewhere on this list. So that includes Kasperi Kapanen, Sammy Blais, Oscar Sundqvist, Marco Scandella. All of those guys, yeah, they need to perform well, because if you're a UFA, you could be traded at the deadline. Who else do you think belongs on this list, though, Alex? Is there anybody that immediately comes to mind for you?
I would look at certain guys that are in the wing. Like Brandon Saad is a name that I would say is probably playing for his Blues time. He's got a no-trade clause, a full no-trade clause, so, like, that's going to handcuff
if somebody's trading for him at the deadline, it's a contender, so you would think that he would probably say, okay.
And if you're him, I mean, you want to go somewhere where you can win, because you'll be 34 at the end of your contract, and you'd like to prove yourself. So, and if this team misses the playoffs again, defensively, you know, we mentioned Marco Scandella. I think all top four defensemen, although you heard Friedman say, and I believe, Parayko's not going anywhere, but I would say all top four defensemen are put on the spotlight right now that, look, if you don't perform to the level we need you to, whether it's being traded away or being sent through waivers and off this team, something's going to happen, especially after Doug Armstrong's strong comments. But this will be an unpopular opinion, but I think the two names that probably should be on this list is both Jordan Kyrou and Pavel Buchnevich.
Agreed.
Pavel Buchnevich, modified no trade clause, but next year's his final year. And if you're the Blues, I said this yesterday, I'm not going to give out another $8 million per year contract unless that player is proven to be somebody who is going to get me out of this retool. And as much as I love Pavel Buchnevich, I'm not sure if you've seen that yet. And Jordan Kyrou, we talked about this with Dreger. If you don't get back to that goal production and you still are turning the puck over at times, or you're still not playing like the $8.125 million player, if you're Doug Armstrong, before that no trade kicks in, much like Philadelphia just did with Travis Sanheim, you're going to look at this and say, we're going to have to see if something's out there for you.
I think that the Kyrou thing is the next year. I think he's got a little longer of a leash than some of the other players that we're talking about that need more urgency in the decision-making. I think Kyrou will get an opportunity the rest of this year and probably next to be able to perform under whoever the new head coach is. So the rest of this year, if that's under Bannister, and then next year, if it's Bannister or somebody else, you want to see what he can do, right? You want to see how he performs when it's not Craig Berube that's delivering the message. Better, worse, indifferent. Let's find out what it looks like. On Pavel Buchnevich, though, that one is something that is more urgent, because you're going to have to decide this offseason, maybe this trade deadline, what your future plans are with him. He has 1 year remaining on his contract after the after this season at $5.8 million. And then he's going to be $8+ million after that. I'd be shocked if he accepts anything less. He shouldn't accept anything less. He'll be 29 years old when he's up for free agency. That's the going rate for guys like him that are putting up point per game and are great defensively, play on the power play, play on the penalty kill. He's awesome in every situation. He is exactly the type of player that every team in the NHL could use. That's why he's going to be expensive. And that's why you could see the Blues decide, you know what? Maybe we break Pavel Buchnevich into three pieces that we think can help us in 3 years when we're really contending once again. Maybe one of those pieces is a first-round draft pick. Another is a prospect. Another is a player that can help us right now on the blue line. Like, that's the kind of thing you could do if you trade a Pavel Buchnevich. But for those reasons, I think they're both names, I would agree with you, Alex, are worthy of monitoring. But I think one, Pavel Buchnevich, is more urgent than the other in Jordan Kyrou.
Yeah, and like if you're trading a Pavel Buchnevich, somebody texted in and said, if you trade Buch, it's almost certainly a full rebuild. Not necessarily. I mean, I know you're going to look at it that way because you're trading away a piece that you thought was going to be a part of this, but what are you getting back in return? Because as BK mentioned, you split this into a couple of different parts. Do you get a first-round draft pick that, not meaning you're drafting with it, but does it become a useful piece for you to trade for something in the offseason? But I mean, we've seen time and time again, and Darren Dreger said it, that the Blues need to fix their defense. we've seen guys get traded for young defensemen that need an opportunity. Mikhail Sergachev is the one that comes to mind when Montreal traded him for Jonathan Drouin. But the most recent one, look at the Arizona Coyotes. The Arizona Coyotes traded for Sean Durzi from the LA Kings. And Sean Durzi has been playing in their top pair and has been a big reason why their team is successful. He's 25 years old. There's a team like the San Jose Sharks, and look, San Jose is not going to be going after a Buchnevich, but do they offer up a Mario Ferraro for something like this, a 25-year-old left-handed defenseman? If you're getting something that you feel fixes one area that is a weakness for you, it puts you in a better position. I don't want to move Pavel Buchnevich, but I think from now until the end of the season, Pavel Buchnevich is put into a position that is prove that you're a piece to fix this, not a piece that is going to have to be moved out.
Yeah, and I think with Buchnevich, I don't even know if it's so much his play, because I think he's been fine this year. I think he's been close to kind of what I expected.
Agreed.
It just feels more of urgency on the front office, in my opinion, on deciding Buchnevich's future, because he falls into that category that Army typically doesn't do, which is extend a guy once they're into their 30s. And that's when Buchnevich's contract will be up. He will be 30 when he starts the first year of that new deal. And if you're going to trade a Pavel Buchnevich, this is the deadline to do it, I would think, because his value is going to be at his highest because he's not a rental and he's going to have another full year of control, and the other team then can also negotiate the contract with him there. So I think that whether it's Buchnevich is the guy that's playing for his future here, I don't necessarily know if he's playing for it. I think it's the front office is got the pressure meter going on. Okay, we've got to decide if he's a part of this retool, because I think he's one of the few guys that I would say I know what you're getting from Pavel Buchnevich each night. I don't think he falls into the category of he has to play his way onto the team past the trade or in the next 3 months.
I think you have to be able to find out what his place is within this team, because I think right now it's kind of hard to see, okay, where does he fit? I think he's a top-line winger.
I think he and Robert Thomas are your pair for the future, but the problem is
are he, Robert Thomas, and Jordan Kyrou too similar? That would be my question if I'm the Blues. And if I'm building around Thomas and Kyrou, those are my faces of the franchise that I'm trying to move forward with. Can you have Buchnevich on that line? I think that's why we see them together.
And how many times has that line outplayed the other team's top line?
I think there were times last year where it did quite a bit.
Maybe, but I'd argue as many times as we thought they were outplaying the other team's best line, they were also being outplayed significantly by the other. And you want to pay $24 million, maybe more, for those three players.
That's what we need to find out.
And that's why they're playing.
3 months, I hope that they play every game together because of this. Because if you can get them to be that line that is a legit one of the upper level lines in the NHL, then you're in a really good place and you can build around those three guys. If you can't, though, if they cannot play together, there becomes a question of, okay, which one you might have to choose. Do we want to build around Kyrou? Do we want to build around Buchnevich? Because it's hard to do that with two of those guys making $8 million a piece.
Someone asked a really interesting question, and I'm generally just curious. From the 618, it says, with Kyrou, do you think you could essentially flip him for another long-term deal that's a defenseman? If you know what you know now of wondering if he's the guy for you, and Philadelphia came to you with that same offer of Sanheim for a Jordan Kyrou, would you pull the trigger now?
I wouldn't, because I think the upside with like right now you're talking about today, no. Because I think the upside for Jordan Kyrou is to be a 35 to 40 goal scorer that you're building around for the next decade.
What if Darren Dreger, as he said, he doesn't get back to that potential?
I would take the risk, because Sanheim, I don't think Sanheim's a number one defenseman. And I do think there's a chance that Jordan Kyrou is the top goal scorer on a championship level team. And when I have the opportunity to build around one of those guys, I'm going to try to take that shot. Yep. And I'm taking the risk of him never getting back to what he was last year. And even if he does get back, maybe it's so bad defensively that you can't win around it. So I know that that's a risk that I'm taking, but it's a risk I believe is worthwhile. The one guy that I would have had those conversations about was Matthew Tkachuk. If I'm trading Jordan Kyrou, I want to upgrade from Jordan Kyrou, and I think it's too much of a lateral move to get a guy like Travis Sanheim.
And that's kind of where I am, is I would do it if you're getting another guy that you think is a better goal scorer, more consistent goal scorer than Jordan Kyrou. For defenseman, I wouldn't do it, because now I've pulled away the guy that I think can be a 35-40 goal scorer to add to my defense, which is great, but then who's the guy that fills his void? Who's the guy that then scores 35-40 goals? Because I don't think he's on the roster.
I agree. Maybe it's Stugger and maybe it's Dvorsky, but that's years to come. Sure. The problem with all of this is the biggest challenge for this front office is upside going to help us win? because right now upside has not been helping us win.
But I don't think you're winning with another defenseman in this group right now either.
That's what I was going to say.
think you're just
Probably
not
not.
winning this year.
Yeah, and I think you're 2-3
I'm
years.
looking bigger. I'm looking beyond this year. This year's a wash. I'm just saying, if you do that in the offseason where a team says, we've got a defenseman, you give us Kyrou, we'll move forward.
If we're talking about it then, and I've already seen the next 4 months of what the season looks like, I may have a different answer for you then. But I want to have that information available before I'm willing to commit one
and
way or
like
the
you
other.
said, I hope Drew Bannister just says, you two are playing for the next 54 games this season.
By the way,
Are you
before we
three?
get to believe it or not on the other side, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you've got a scenario, we'll tell you if we are believing it or not coming up in just a little bit. I do want to get to the power play because as much as all of these individual players are going to be under scrutiny over the next 3 months, the biggest area that has to improve is the power play. Joey Vitale had some interesting thoughts on that earlier today.
Guys, there's been like at least 8 or 9 examples of it this year where they are so close at the end. Maybe they have a power play late, they get the equalizer, maybe get ahead by 1, whatever it is. You know, you're at 8% right now or something like that. Well, even if you double that to 16%, which still isn't great, but if you just double that, and let's say you go from 7 power play goals, and let's say you have 15 at this point, I'm telling you, it's a difference about 3 or 4 or 5 games, and you may be looking at a difference of 10 points, which it completely drastically changes the trajectory of this division and where they are at in the standings.
We've talked about that a million different times, Alex. You've brought up the numbers on how many opportunities they've had to tie the game with a power play or to extend their lead with a power play this year, and they almost always, invariably, find a way to screw it up. And there were some good notes earlier today on Sportsnet in the 32 Thoughts column about what the Blues power play has done so far this year. According to their numbers, the Blues are 4th in the NHL in offensive zone time with the man advantage, but they are the 2nd worst power play in the league. Moral of the story, they're not getting pucks at the net, man. They have the puck, and they're just pushing it around the outside, pushing it around the outside. There's nothing that's getting accomplished while they have the puck. My guess is the first thing you will see that changes on that power play with the new analyst that's involved, the new head coach that's involved, they're going to say, just shoot the freaking puck. If it goes the other way, whatever. We're already allowing goals anyways. You might as well put the pucks on the net.
Quantity over quality.
This is something that Dennis Gates has done with Mizzou basketball, where he says, hey, if you have an open three-pointer and you don't shoot it, I'm taking you off I'm taking you off of the court. He says that to a 7'5" power forward.
Vanover.
He says it to everybody. If you have an open look and you don't take it, you shouldn't be on the court, and I'm going to take you out. Yeah. The same thing should be true for the Blues. If you've got a good look, not a great one, a good look, and you don't take it, you are getting taken off of the ice, and I will replace you on the power play unit.
And Brad Richards, who is their kind of consultant now that Doug Armstrong said yesterday, I mean, made a Hall of Fame career, in my opinion, of being an excellent worker on the power play. He's going to focus solely on, like, start getting shots and start putting yourself in a position to shoot. And just to update the numbers for everybody, they've had 15 opportunities this season to take the lead on the power play. They've had 12 opportunities to tie the game on the power play and 19 opportunities to extend the lead on the power play, and have not scored on any of those.
None of them.
I'm keeping track of that all season long.
Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Believe it or not, here on 101 ESPN.
We're going to dedicate this one to Craig Berube.
We'll always believe in you, Craig.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
free. Fly away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be? Chief on another team.
Believe it or not, it's just me.
And Chief, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. You give us a scenario, we will tell you if we are believing it or not.
Son of a...
All right, let's start out with this, guys. Believe it or not, the Blues come out energized, focused,
Not.
and with passion.
No.
What are you making bullet points for us?
And beat the Ottawa Senators tonight at home in their first game after firing Craig Berube.
I believe it. Jake Neighbors had the comment, which I know, you can say it, but the team won't do it. He said, we got to be there for Drew Bannister tonight. I think this is going to be the best game you've seen from the Blues all season long, especially you're putting Jordan Binnington in between the pipes. Ottawa's going to bring you a little bit of a push, but I got to imagine that the Blues are going to walk out of this one with a win. 4-2 victory final score.
Not.
Surprise, surprise, this guy.
It doesn't shock me Jake Neighbors is saying all the right things. So Jake Neighbors has done all the right things all year long.
Oh, has he?
He has. It's the reason he was on the top line earlier before Chief was let go. I'm not going to believe it. I have no reason to believe that they're going to get that coach bump because a lot of these teams that got these coach bumps, Minnesota, Edmonton, I think they had higher expectations coming into the year.
Well,
the Blues, I thought, were a 500 team coming into the year. They're right around 500. They let the coach go. Their coach bump might mean maybe they score a power play goal tonight.
That'd be cool.
Outside of that,
oh yeah,
no,
they're
I'm not
scoring.
going to believe this.
I'll add on to it. They're scoring a power play goal tonight.
Alex, what do you got for us today?
Believe it or not, the Blues go on at least a 3 or more game win streak by the end of the season.
Not believing. Oh, by the end of the season? Yeah, they'll win 3 games in a row at some point.
Wow, you were really confident on that one.
Oh, I think they will. The worst team in the NHL, whoever that is, has probably won 3 games.
The Blues, and they've won 2.
The Blues aren't the worst team in the NHL.
Oh, sorry, you're right.
Have the Sharks won 3 in a row?
I actually think they have.
All right, well, if they can do it.
Hold on, let me
I think
look.
they recently went on a win streak.
The Sharks?
They have not won 3 in a row, but they won 2, lost 1, lost 1, 2, lost and 1. So they've been better lately.
I'll believe it, by the way.
Blues started something for the Sharks. They got back on track after beating the
Yeah, they
Blues.
did. They started to come from behind.
Army did say that the Blues were the homecoming for a lot
Yeah, but
of
by the way, you thought it was bad when the Blues lost to the Sharks. Imagine being the Islanders where you were up by 3 and you blew that 3-goal lead in the third period against the Sharks.
Not what you want. So no, I'm not. I am believing it.
I will too.
At some point win 3 games in a row. They'll get a 5-game winning streak at some point. This year.
I don't know if it's going to start tonight because, man, you got a gauntlet.
Pause. Let's not just overlook that he said a 5-game winning
I can
streak.
see it.
No, I can buy into 3. That's the best I
It's
can
just
do.
2 more, man.
Yeah. They haven't shown that they can play a full 60 minutes hockey, but maybe 3 times all year.
Yeah, they've only won 1 3-game winning streak so far this year, but that doesn't mean that they won't win a 5-game winning streak at some point.
Yeah, I like his logic behind it.
Unbelievable. Believe it or not, Doug Armstrong will acquire an NHL player that will be a part of this retool throughout and see the exit of it at this year's deadline. And what I mean by that is a Noah Hannafin, someone that is a NHL piece that he thinks becomes a foundation block.
I think that happens in the offseason. I do think they will do that. I think there will be a big move that is made by Doug Armstrong and this team at some point in the offseason. I do not believe that it will take place at the deadline, so I will say not believing it.
Yeah, I'm going to not believe this one, too. I think this happens at the draft. Because I think they're going to try and acquire as much as picks as possible this deadline, and then go into that offseason saying, let's see what we can do, because you're going to have already 2 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks in this year's draft, and if you're Doug Armstrong, man, you don't care about any of those. You need to start winning.
Yeah, I'm not believing either. I do think they do make a big splash in the offseason. I mean, it's pretty telling Army tried it this past offseason. But I was just curious because I thought maybe one of you might buy into it. Maybe they get a defenseman that helps them long term. But I'm with you guys.
Hannafin's still my guy, but I think you're going to have a ton of teams that are trying to get Hannafin, and unless the Blues are going to be willing to cough up something expensive, it's the only way you're going to get no Hannafin from Calgary at this point.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, the T-Bone 3 is way better than the Ferrario 5.
Oh, believe it. Happens to be on point.
It's text line, man. I didn't ask that.
Bull. I don't see it on the text line. I don't see it.
From the 636, my good friend.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
See, believe it.
No, it's trash. T-bone 3 is never successful.
It has
I
a better
click on
open.
5-on-5 all the time.
Believe it or not, guys, Mizzou wins at least 10 games next year. Did you see that the Tigers' schedule was released yesterday? That was pretty good.
That's a Panther.
Did you see that they
was.
are going to play at UMass?
Yeah, what a road trip.
Yeah, why are you complaining about that, man?
Yeah.
Who cares?
It's a dub, man.
It's a great game. We're going against the Eagles.
Let's do them a favor, okay?
Are they the Eagles?
I'm shocked that Mizzou didn't try to backtrack out of this.
They have.
Oh, are they?
Yep, they have tried to get out of this game, and UMass has said no.
Good for UMass.
What do you think the capacity is for UMass football stadium?
Oh my gosh.
It's called
20,000.
Warren McGurk.
I'll go 20,000.
Alex,
It's like the size of an NHL arena.
Say that again. Sorry, I wasn't listening.
what is the capacity of the UMass football stadium
More than Mullet Arena,
in Hadley, Massachusetts?
10,000.
It is 17,000,
I was close.
which is smaller than many stadiums in the state of Texas for high school football.
All right, I have a. Oh,
Mizzou
geez.
is going to play there next year. Jim Sturk, buddy, come on! I cannot believe
But
you scheduled
it's
this
good
game.
to be able to get a taste of
Yeah,
culture around
yeah.
college
Go
and to
get
get to
some
go to
crab cakes.
What's your problem with Massachusetts? You get some clam chowder.
It was the worst place that I went to in the Northeast. There was no close second.
Well, I mean, I agree with that. Boston's the worst.
It's terrible. Absolutely horrible.
People are rude. No bars stay open when their team loses in the Stanley Cup final.
Salem was way better than Boston.
We're not open to booze
Mizzou, by the
fans.
way, is also playing against Boston College next year.
They're
as
the
well,
Eagles.
but that's at home.
They're the Eagles.
Not only,
I
by
don't
the
know
way,
what UMass is.
Mizzou schedule next year: Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College,
State loss.
Vanderbilt,
Buffalo lost.
Texas A&M on the road, UMass on the road. My God. Auburn, Alabama, Oklahoma at home, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, home against Arkansas. 10 wins, believe it or not.
I'll believe it. I think they're going to have a better roster next year than they had this year. And
Got
with
some
that,
good transfers on campus this weekend.
And with that being said, I think Drink has shown the ability. If you got the good roster, you could do it. So I'll believe this one.
yeah, I'll believe it too.
College football playoff, here we come.
Suck it, Alabama.
I think it's really like two losses on that schedule right there, and that is the Bama and Oklahoma game. And
I
like
think they beat
Oklahoma at
Oklahoma.
home, like they've got a shot. And then you got to be careful, make sure you don't lay an egg somewhere. But yeah, I'll be optimistic coming off a good year for the Tigers. I'll believe it. I'll believe in 10 wins. By the way, you asked the question of how much UMass Stadium holds. Better question would have been how often has that stadium even sold out?
Rarely.
Maybe
You know
never.
what? Your comment. You don't know that. They might
don't.
have great matchups that you just don't believe in.
They've been one of the worst like 5 programs in college football for the last like 10 years.
Believe it or not, BK hates everywhere except Kansas City.
What? No. I
True, believe.
What a jerk.
don't understand what that has to do with it. UMass wins by year.
Oh God.
3-1-1-0-1-4-4-2-3-3-1-1-1-3-5-5.
Sounds like the Barry Odom era in Mizzou.
Hey, in 1901 though, they were 8-1.
Wow.
Back in 1901.
There's no. Were they a Division I school then? No chance.
How
they
many
were in the independent league.
How many schools were playing college football in 1901?
Well, I think that was back in Illinois' prime.
That's like the World's Fair era.
The 1901 Massachusetts Minutemen, coached by the great James Halligan.
Oh, he was.
T-Bone, can you spell Massachusetts?
No, we don't have to do that. Coming up next, it's time for our Major League
Yeah.
Baseball offseason.
Roundup!
You're on 101 ESPN.
Darren Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Blues back in action tonight as they host the Ottawa Senators. And we'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock tonight with Alex Ferrario, and then puck drop at 7 with Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale. This Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Time for your Major League Baseball offseason roundup here on 101 ESPN. Let's start out with the Blue Jays, who have found their pivot, it appears, to Shohei Ohtani. Like. No, this guy is not Shohei Ohtani, but he's coming from Shohei Ohtani's current team. JD Martinez, according to a new report, is the newest player that the Blue Jays are interested in potentially acquiring this offseason.
Technically, you got Shohei Ohtani as the DH hitter.
Yeah, they're looking to bolster their lineup. Now, it is worth noting, JD Martinez was actually quite good last year. Had a OPS of almost 900 for the Dodgers. However, he is a geriatric. He's 36 years old. What do you think about the possibility of the Blue Jays acquiring JD Martinez, Alex?
Fine, but I don't know. You recover from not acquiring Shohei Ohtani and get a JD Martinez, who you hope is going to be good offensively as the DH, because that's obviously the position they were going for. I think there are other guys, other bats that I probably would have spent the money I was willing to spend on Shohei to come in and be a bat better than. I would have paid
a rough offseason for bats, man.
I would have done it with Cody Bellinger over JD Martinez.
That's fair.
And you got somebody who could at least play the field for you at times rather than just be a sole DH. Like, what's JD Martinez? JD Martinez is solely your DH.
100%.
And if you need a day off for Guerrero, if you need a day off for what's his face in the outfield?
Who are we talking
The
about?
center fielder. Who?
George Springer?
Yeah, George Springer. And you're going to need days off for those guys because obviously they can't stay healthy for a full season. Now you can't do it because JD Martinez's bat's out.
The problem is, like, some of the top bats are guys that they already had. Teoscar Hernandez, Lourdes Gurriel Jr.
Matt Chapman.
Yeah, those are all the guys that they've had, and they're all the top free agents. Would you rather have Jorge Soler or JD Martinez for that lineup? I think I would rather have JD Martinez because of the lack of strikeouts.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So I think this is probably the way that they're going to have to go. It's a smart move. He's an old guy. It probably doesn't move the needle a ton, but if he can capture some of what he had last year, it'd be a smart move for the Blue Jays.
And I like it because it's going to be a short-term deal. It's going to be a 1-2 year deal, and if it goes south, you can just DFA him and just cut that contract off the books. Bellinger, I have no feel for Cody Bellinger and what he is. I would not want to give him a 6-7 year deal like I think he's going to get.
Speaking of the Dodgers, it appears that the Dodgers are looking to continue bolstering their rotation. According to multiple reports, the Dodgers are in on discussions with the Tampa Bay Rays that involve Tyler Glasnow and Manuel Margot. They might get both of them in such a deal. Alex, what would it mean to you if the Dodgers are able to indeed acquire Tyler Glasnow?
They're going to be the juggernaut that's in the National League. And
Agreed.
I mean, I'm including the Atlanta Braves in this conversation because the biggest question mark that I had about the Dodgers was how are they going to manage pitching? And if you go out there and get Tyler Glasnow, you already brought in Shohei, who I know is not going to be pitching for you, but there's still a chance you get Yamamoto. You're going to be one of the more dominant teams from top to bottom this season, but then for the next 3-4 years, you're going to be a scary good team.
Can I be honest? I don't know how much the Glasnow trade would move the needle for me on the Dodgers and where they stand right now. And the reason
They need innings.
Yeah, and that's why. Because they need innings, and
they should sign Jordan Montgomery.
They should go after Montgomery. They should be potentially looking at the Cease market, which sounds like they are, and it still sounds like they're in on Yamamoto.
I would actually be interested in Giolito for them. If they go out there and get these other guys that we're talking about, you got to get Glasnow, you got to get one of the Montgomery, somebody like that. But if you add Giolito as a back end of the rotation, 3-year deal, money doesn't matter to them clearly right now. Waka would be another guy that kind of fits into that criteria. They can fill out their rotation pretty well with what's available.
And that's why, I say, right now, I'm not sure how much Glasnow moves the needle on me. Offseason's still young. They still are going to add pitching to that rotation. But right now, in terms of where it looks at, he's great when you get to October because he's got the swing and miss stuff. But, how much innings is he going to cover? Because he may have the same kind of innings that you're going to get, out of a Bobby Miller this year. So.
Speaking of the Dodgers, they are also, according to Tom Verducci, interested in targeting Josh Hader and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Jesus. So if they go out and do that... Dude, the Dodgers are a full-blown Death Star potentially this upcoming season.
Do you think they offer all of those guys $300 million, but
With
they say,
all of it deferred?
yeah, at the end of this, so like this first year, you're going to make like $1 million.
Yeah, they're going to have Hader, Yamamoto, Ohtani, and like Matt Chapman making a combined $12 million this year. It's going to be amazing.
Good.
As we continue along with our Major League Baseball offseason roundup. Fire, partner. Let's go quick hitters here. Guys, the Marlins are considering a potential reunion for Skip Schumacher with Andrew
Carlson?
Kisner. What do you think about the possibility of
O'Neill?
Andrew Kisner heading down to South Beach?
Cool. Probably could have traded him to Miami for,
what I
like a depth pitching rather than just outright him.
Yeah, that was my initial reaction too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it tells you about the player if Skip Schumacher, who spent time with him, says, yeah, we want this guy.
I mean, he fits perfectly for what they're looking for. And, like, I think it got overlooked. Like, kids had a decent offensive season last year. And if you're willing to bet a little bit on maybe he's found it out at the plate. He's no longer the 200 hitter, and he's got a little bit of pop to his bat, and he's a captain. So why not bring him in? I actually like to move for the Miami Marlins.
If you're a team that needs a backup catcher, I would just sign him and just say, we'll call it, be done. Andrew Kisner's perfectly fine. He can handle our staff. He's a good dude in the locker room. He's got great energy. He brings good personality. Like,
he's probably going to make what he's going to make this year.
Yeah, $1 million.
Like, that's how I don't understand how there was no possible way that there was trade value for Andrew Kisner.
It continues to be stunning to me that was the decision, but neither here nor there. Guys, as frustrated as we get here in St. Louis about the Cardinals missing out on top free agents, I can't imagine what it is like in San Francisco right now. Farhan Zaidi, their president of baseball operations, came out yesterday and said, hey, yeah, we offered the same contract to Shohei Ohtani that he ended up signing in LA. Now, whether you believe that or not doesn't much matter. I believe they probably did. They're desperate right now to get a star, and Ohtani was the biggest star that was available, maybe in the history of the sport via free agency. Guys, where do they turn? What do the Giants do? Because it doesn't sound like Yamamoto is seriously considering them. It sounds like he's down to New York or LA. What do the Giants do this offseason to get a star? Because right now, they don't have one.
I think they're going to overpay for Blake Snell, and I think that's it. Maybe you go for some upside, maybe Bellinger. Maybe you go for some upside like a Giolito, but they're not going to make a trade. I think they're going to have to overpay for certain free agents that are left, and I'm not sure that's the recipe for success for the Giants. It was amazing watching fan reaction to the center fielder that they signed.
Oh, Jung-Ho Lee?
Yeah, it was incredible looking at the reaction from Giants fans of like, this is the offseason that you go out there and do.
Eno Saris, who I think does a really good job of breaking down players, he the other day had a Yamamoto piece that came out, basically said, yeah, this dude's an ace. Like, he's amazing. Unbelievable player.
Good the Cardinals didn't go throw money at him.
He looked at the center fielder that the Giants acquired and said, I mean, the closest thing is probably like Brendan Donovan in terms of what the type of player is that they acquired. Now, Brendan Donovan is a really good player. I would love to have him if I'm the Giants. If that's the best thing that you acquire in the offseason, you have failed spectacularly.
Do you want Brendan Donovan for that money?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up too. $18 million from Brendan Donovan. Look, I love Brendan Donovan.
I think that's going to be the market. That's the thing is, like, I think we're underestimating how expensive it's going to be to keep one of, maybe both of, Lars Nootbaar and Brendan Donovan long term.
Well, if that's the case, then you should trade one of them to Seattle immediately and get one of their pitchers.
Potentially.
Especially if Seattle makes a real push for Blake Snell and they got to move one of these pitchers out. If they're going to cost you that much to keep, where I don't need both of those guys making 18 mil plus, yeah, trade one of them to go get your starting pitcher.
I'd pick up the telegram and say, let's dance, partner.
There is a new report out from Dan Clark, who says that Yamamoto was, quote, extremely impressed by the Dodgers' presentation, including the support staff that was in attendance in the meeting that included Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and Will Smith. They have offered a 10-year contract.
Like
we wait.
Like Will Smith, like the actor Will Smith, like I Am Legend? That'd be awesome.
He is a legend, but
let's just be honest. Will Smith happened to be in the facility when Yamamoto was touring, and they went, "Oh, hey, that's our catcher.
He's the catcher that's going to help you out.
Come join us,
Yoshi. Here's Will Smith. That Will Smith?
It'd be awkward if Betts, Freeman, and Ohtani walked by and just said, "Will, bam, we've got a meeting here with Yamamoto."
Let's play this game. Who do the Cardinals send? Lars Nootbaar, obviously.
More than to that meeting?
3. You send 3 guys.
Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah.
I don't know about Paul Goldschmidt there. I need a little more excitement. Maybe Wilson Contreras.
Yadier Molina.
No, sorry, he's in Puerto Rico.
No, like he's going to be a part of my meeting.
Albert Pujols.
Cool.
Chris Carpenter.
I'm in.
Adam Wainwright.
Oh, yeah, you do send Adam Wainwright.
Bring a puppy.
The Cardinals could do pretty well. I think people made up a lot of their jokes yesterday, and I get it, about who the Cardinals would send. They'd have a really good.
They send Ollie, Joe McEwing, and John Mozeliak and be like, these are the guys that are bringing you to St. Louis.
Yes.
Hey, Joe has an office down in the basement, but you'll see him once.
Joe's got an office almost all season until Yachty's in town, and then Yachty takes that office.
That's the latest in our Major League Baseball offseason.
Roundup! There's a snake in my boots.
Didn't know where to go from there, did you?
No, I was ready for it. I had that one. You can't really transition into that with the yeehaw.
Coming up next, we're going to give you a chance to win a pair of tickets to see the Blues versus the Stars this weekend. By the way, right now, you can go to 101ESPN.com if you'd like to and check out our new merch store. Throughout the month of December, we are helping out with Operation Food Search. We partnered with an STL shirt company to offer special 101 ESPN online merch. This month, you can include some t-shirts over there, hoodies, hats. Check it all out. 101ESPN.com is the place where you can go. It is powered by McBride Homes. We're hitting the BK and Ferrario Rewind and giving you a chance to win Blues versus Stars tickets next year on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, a late addition to the show. Alex, tomorrow we're going to be joined by the one, the only, my great white buffalo, Bruce Boudreau. Looking forward to that. We're going to ask him definitively, are you interested in the Blues head coaching job, Bruce?
I was lying to you. He's not coming on tomorrow. I just wanted to see you get excited. We'll have Mike Rupp on, though.
I can tell he's being serious.
Look how excited he got.
The thing is like I totally believe him.
Are you being serious?
I got you. Yeah, he's coming on 11:30 tomorrow.
Cool. Yeah.
I got
Bruce
you, T-Bone.
Boudreau, he's back. He's still on the show tomorrow. I'm excited. That's going to be awesome. I think he should be the next head coach of the St. Louis Blues.
I can't wait for you to ask, like you did with Ken Hitchcock, where he's like, can you tell some of those intangibles? You ask Bruce Boudreau, he's like, are you going to be the coach of the Blues? If I tell you, I'd have to kill you.
No, he wins.
And Bruce Boudreau is like the happiest guy in the world.
I know. That's
Love
why
that
I wanted, the vibes would be immaculate.
He always looks like Santa Claus from Rudolph cartoon to me. Rosy red cheeks.
Just constantly pink.
Just watch the movie.
Okay, not pink, man. Rosy red cheeks.
I say that with all
pink is an insult. Rosy red cheeks are a compliment.
Sounds
Do you
delicate.
feel that way?
Yeah, if you tell me I look pink, I'm going to punch you.
Okay, that's fair. Rosy red cheeks it is.
Hey, Bruce, I think you look pink all the time. Oh, cool. See ya.
That should be the way we open the show tomorrow. 11:30. Now to be joined by Bruce Boudreau, the pink man.
He'll hang up.
Come on, man.
I'm kidding, of course.
Come on, man.
All right. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. It was mostly better than what we're doing right now. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. I thought there was some pretty good breakdown from Joey Vitale and Darren Dreger on what went wrong for Craig Berube's time here in St. Louis, why he is no longer the head coach, and pushing it forward a little bit, what we want to see from them the rest of the way. Blues getting back in action tonight against the Senators. Coming up here in just a minute, we'll give you a chance to win a pair of tickets to see them on Saturday night against the Dallas Stars. Alex, as we wrap this thing up today, what is the number one thing that you're looking for tonight? Blues versus Senators, first game after the Craig Berube fire.
I think it's the two notes that Doug Armstrong talked about yesterday, the passion and the accountability. And you'll be able to see both of those. The passion in terms of the Blues being able to bring that physical presence. And I got to get to BK's face because he's making something. And the
Did you see this?
No, what happened?
Jordan Kyrou's comment?
No.
I thought you were referring to Taylor Clark going to the Brewers.
Oh, yeah. Excited about Taylor Clark. What happened?
Jordan Kyrou on his relationship with Craig Berube. Quote, I've got no comment. He's not my coach.
Wow.
Well, I know why Berube left town.
Can I add also what he said about Bannister? Quote, yeah, it feels like it's a little bit of a fresh start kind of a thing. We're all excited here. We want to turn the ship around right now, get our culture back a little bit, get back to how we know how to play hockey.
Okay, now take that comment from him. Oh, man, now I'm pissed. Now, and then let's go to yesterday from Jordan Binnington, and I got to find it right now. Lou Korek tweeted it out.
I've got it in my notes from yesterday. But.
Yeah, Jordan Binnington. We've got to be proud to wear the blue note and proud to be a part of this organization and play for the city. If you're not, just get out of here because we're not wasting time. These are special years. Being able to play in the NHL, it's a privilege.
And I got the sense yesterday from Braden Chen when he made his comments that some guys in that locker room bought the message and others did not.
And now you know why.
I think we know one.
And now you know
I can exclusively
no
report
comment
one.
in that kind of a question, which is very easy to just say platitudes and say, hey, Craig Berube accomplished a lot here. He built me up as both a person and a player in my young years here in St. Louis. I'm going to wish him nothing but the best moving forward, but we're focused on what it's going to be like with Bannister as our head coach now, and I don't want to say anything further. I appreciate that you guys have questions about what happened here, but I don't want to discuss that any further. If you guys have any questions about what we're going to do to make sure that this thing gets turned around, I'd be happy to answer. That's the super easy thing to do if you're Kyrou, and it says nothing. Like, it doesn't say that you had a great relationship with him or anything like that. To say no comment on your relationship with Craig Berube, that says everything you need to know about his relationship with Craig Berube. So I'm sure the Fast Lane will be discussing that at length coming up later on today on their show. We will certainly discuss it tomorrow on our show, and we'll be looking forward to seeing what the response is tonight. Blues versus Senators pregame coverage with Alex coming up at 6 o'clock. But right now, 314-399-9646 is your opportunity to win a free pair of tickets to see Blues versus Stars on December 16th. 16th. You can also have a bonus opportunity to win those at 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app. If you're texter number 101, you can answer this question correctly. You are going home with that pair of tickets. The question is, what was the store that the two burglars ended up stealing more than $2,000 worth of merchandise from that we talked about earlier today? What was the name of that store? If you got that, text 314-399-9646 and your texter number 101. You're getting the pair of tickets to see Blues versus Stars. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Fastlane coming up next.